I mean, he doesn't work his day job. He might have been able to interview and get it in. That's not how I work.
Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
I thought I had texted you back.
I'd like to call all of our commissioners and staff, please, to the dais. Calling all commissioners and staff to the dais. Stat.
Be appointed because they can't sit on
See here.
you.
We're live, folks. We're live, folks. Come on up. Step up. Grab a seat.
Okay. Not my seat.
I do want to apologize for everyone coming up here last minute, but I will, in fact, tell you that every single clock in the last 4 rooms that we went through all say different times. So I totally understand. All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, August 15th, City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Thank you.
If everyone would please rise for the moment of silence on behalf of Commissioner Andy Amoroso.
And tonight, the moment of silence is to remember Juan Cruz, the young man that was shot last week outside City Hall. Thank you.
Commissioner Robinson, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioner Amoroso, for doing that as well. Our condolences and love go out to the family and friends. Okay, additions, deletions, or reordering. I see one item, City Clerk.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Item 5D has been postponed.
Okay, that's the investment presentation by D. Scott Stitcher.
Yeah.
So we'll move that to a time uncertain at this point.
I believe it's going to be on September, on September the 19th.
Okay. And that's it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by Commissioner Amoroso. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our presentations, a presentation by one of my personal favorites, Miss Erica Whitfield, District 4 School Board member. Yay! Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. I have a lot of pressure on me tonight. I know Mr. Blackman went ahead and said that I was the most popular YouTube video of all time on his show, so now I feel like there's a lot on me. So if I start to stutter, I just know that's my nervousness from that.
We'll try to make you feel as at home and comfortable as
Well,
possible.
you know, I love Lake Worth. I'm always happy to be here. So
Just picture everybody in the audience in their
Yes.
sunglasses.
Again, my name's Erica Whitfield. I am on your school board. I've served on the school board for about 2.5 years. And I absolutely love this job. I love that I get to be a part of our kids' lives every day in this capacity. And I'm hoping to share with you a little bit of an update today on what's going on in our schools, how they're going in ways that I think that you might be able to help. So let's start with just a real brief information about our schools. When I came to speak to you last time, I don't think we had a new superintendent at the time. We've gotten one about 2 years ago. And one of the special things that happened when we got him is that Dr. Vosa brought with him kind of a higher level of strategic planning and knowledge of how to run a school district than we've ever had here before. It is so impressive to see him work. So we went through and we kind of redid our mission and our vision and updated those a little bit, and we put together a really firm strategic plan. There's been a lot of changes in upper management and principals throughout the last couple of years, and I think that the shift that you're going to start to see in your school district is going to be phenomenal. We have already seen so many changes, and And it means so much to me because, as you know, I do send my daughter to our school right down the street here. And I can see the changes already happening within the school day that she has. So our vision, just to give a general idea of this, I don't want to go too long into it, but we envision a dynamic, collaborative, multicultural community, and that's really important to me, where education and lifelong learning are valued and supported and all learners reach their highest potential. Also, our mission is to provide a world-class education with excellence and equity to empower each student to reach his or her highest potential. That's the most important thing. We are focused on 4 different strategic themes, and one of them is to support a positive and supportive school climate. I think this is really important, is to really recognize, this is my favorite of all the themes, and I really push hard for this to be recognized in our schools. But I want our students to come to school and have the ability to be the best person that they can possibly be. So I think this is something that we are really excelling at lately, and making our students feel welcome, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So one of the things that we're doing as we are really kind of refocusing our education for our students is looking at a breakdown between our different ethnicities and our racial groups and how they perform on our test scores, because we realized over time that we weren't really looking at that in depth. It was some knowledge that we had at the district, but we hadn't necessarily brought to light. But our superintendent is really he really believes in honesty and transparency with the community, and how important it is to say that we have to tackle these problems head on. So we've looked at what the graduation rates are for white students, Hispanic students, African American students, and our ESE or our ELL students. So we're looking at those numbers to see kind of where the scores really are and how we can improve them. So one of the things I want to talk about today, I have kind of a list of things, but I'm going to try really hard to go through them, is how attendance really ties into this. As a school district, we've decided to tackle things from a community standpoint, and one of the things that we're tackling head on is attendance. We feel that if we can't get our students to school on time, and we can't get them to be there, how are we ever going to teach them? How can we show these students the knowledge that they need to know to become productive members of our society? So we've looked at the attendance, and one of my favorite pieces of information, I want to pull this out so I can tell you about it. We looked at a cohort. A cohort is the kids that all graduate together in 2014, that cohort there. And they looked at their 8th grade absences. So what their absences were in 8th grade, and how that tied into their graduation rates when they graduated 5 years later in 2014. So in 8th grade, students who had 0 to 5 absences were likely to graduate at about an 86.5% rate. It's a pretty good rate. We'd be happy with that number. Students who had 0 to 10 absences graduated at 85.8%. Still not that bad. Students who had 11 to 20 absences were likely to graduate at about 72%. And then students with 21 or more absences, this is when you're starting to see kids who really aren't making it very often, 53.3% of the time they were likely to graduate. So we're looking at a huge difference in when kids actually show up in 8th grade, affecting their ability to graduate 5 years later. So we're seeing that trend over time. There's also a really strong correlation between kids coming to school in kindergarten and 1st grade and what their reading level is by 3rd grade, whether or not they're able to read on grade level. Excuse me. So as I start to talk to you about this today, keep this in mind, because I'm going to come back to it in a couple minutes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we need to do as a community to tackle attendance. But know that that is a very important thing. The other thing that we tie in is what the ethnicity of our test takers is. How often, whether or not they're, we look at Black, Hispanic, and white for our test takers, and we see what the correlation is and whether or not you're more likely to do well. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of different schools here, and so I can get you just a general idea of where we've been over time. So let me pull up this other, I have a great slide on this that I want to talk about. So in 2016 and through 2017 at Highland Elementary, which is our school right over here, we were having an ELL reading rate. I have a better slide that I really want to look at. Sorry, I brought too many slides up here because I was really excited to show you guys everything. One with all my notes on it. Okay, at Highland Elementary, our English language arts, the number of kids who were likely to achieve on grade level, which means that they were proficient and right at grade level, is only about 25% at English language, English language arts, which is reading. The reason that's important is when we look at the kids that were achieving at math, and on the math level, we had about 60% that were on grade level. So if you look at those kids, when we have a lot of these students that people think they can't learn or they're not smart because they don't speak a language that they just showed up to this country, if you look at their math scores and they're at 60% achieving on grade level, but then when you look at them in their reading scores, they're only at 25%, you can see in those numbers there that you have students that are capable of learning, very, very smart, but also trying to learn another language while taking these tests. So I had someone say to me today, imagine that you were to go to Russia and try to take a test right now. What would that feel like to you when you have no concept of that language? Or what if you stayed for a month or 2 months and then you tried to take the test? That's what it's like for some of our students, to try to learn a language, take a test, and then hopefully pass it. So those, you can see over time what we're talking about when we're talking about our students. Just a couple more numbers that I want to mention to you. Barton Elementary, they're at about 37% English language, 25% as well for English language arts for our reading, 25% reading on grade level. North grade is about 53%, and South grade is at 23% reading on grade level. When you look at their math achievement levels, Barton Elementary is at 40%, 68% at North grade, and then South grade is at about 46% reading on grade level. We received the grades for all of our schools recently, except for Lake Worth High School. One of the reasons we didn't, or the reason we didn't get Lake Worth High Schools is because they didn't have all their test takers actually test. You have to test about 95% of the kids in order to get the grade. They were at 94%, but the state is about to release their grade in about a month, so we should know their grade. But what you can see when you look at these schools is that over time, the grades have gone down a little bit for certain ones. North grade, I'm proud to report, has actually gone up to a B this year, which is awesome, and we're very, very proud of that. You'll see Barton Elementary and South Grade Elementary are both at a D right now, which is not very good at all. And so we're putting extra resources towards that because that's something that we know is a difficulty. And again, one of the big problems we have at a couple of these schools is really kids coming in not speaking the language. Highland Elementary has held a C for a few years now, so that's good. They recently got a new principal, and so I think we're going to see some really good gains from them. Lake Worth Middle also held a C for a very long time, and I really do think you're going to see some great things from Lake Worth High School, which we're going to see very soon. Okay. Next thing I want to mention to you really quickly is the school effectiveness questionnaire. This is something that we did as a district in January, which is where we went through and we asked everyone, we asked parents, do you feel that your child is safe at school? Do you feel, is your child being bullied? Things like this, like lots of different questions, kind of what it feels like to go to school there. We actually had a really bad level of participation. Oh, am I out? I'll go.
No. Consensus to please. Thank you.
Thank you. We had not a great level of participation at our schools when it came to parents, but Highland Elementary did actually get some responses. So I wanted to share with you how parents feel about their students at that school. We had about 14% of the over 1,000 parents respond. So obviously the principal did a good job of really getting those parents involved. And as you know, not many of those parents speak English as their first language. So of the 14 people that responded, the responses for school climate, 93% were positive. This is a really good feeling at this school. A diverse community, they said 98% felt that it was a positive. High expectations, 92%. Parental involvement, 94%. This is a very strong culture school. And unfortunately, I don't have the numbers for what it would look like at those other schools, but we do know at Highland that that's where those families are feeling about sending their students to school there. So that's a really good thing because you want people to want to go to school there and to feel comfortable. Then I also looked at the student scores at Highland because I thought it'd be interesting to see how that compared. So we had about 83% of the students respond at Highland. 92% said that they had a great school climate. 74% felt that they had challenging school assignments. I thought that was an interesting question. 89% felt that there was a positive, diverse community, and 81.7% were positive about the parental involvement. You'll notice that went down a lot from 94% when the parents were asked, but so you'll see a big thing there. I also wanted to pull up the numbers for Lake Worth High so you could understand for that score, since we do have the new principal here, and I'm going to introduce him to you in a second. 24% responded here of the students. 64% found that they had challenging assignments. 57% said there was a positive school climate, so significantly less than elementary, but that is something to be expected because high school is never quite as much. 84% said there was a positive, diverse community, and 57% had positive parental involvement. So those are some of the numbers that we have there. The last thing I want to mention right before I bring up our principal and talk to you a little bit about what we can do as a community is our graduation levels. Even though Lake Worth High School has been struggling when it comes to scores, and that's something that we are going to hopefully make better. In FY16, so in our school year 2012, FY12, we had 70% graduation rate, almost 71% graduation rate at Lake Worth High School. Last year, it has gone up to about 75% graduation rate. So even though those are small numbers, this is actually a really good thing for a school with as many challenges as Lake Worth High School does. So the numbers are actually going up. So when the students come in and they are tasked with graduating, we're getting about 3/4 of them there. And this is a school with a very high minority population. So those are numbers get pulled down when that happens, because as I said, we broke that down and we now know that we do have some disparities there that we're gonna have to fix. So Lake Worth High School is doing better when it comes to their scores. And like I said, I really think that we're going to do a really good job of getting our scores up. The last thing I want to mention is Lake Worth Middle, because I didn't have a chance to highlight them yet. But Lake Worth Middle School does have a really great choice program, and they have some students who are really knocking it out of the park when it comes to algebra. In 2017, 93% of them passed the Algebra 1 exam, and the Algebra 2 exam was passed by 94% of those students. So what that means is it's sort of self-selected or selected by the principal. Students who are really doing well take Algebra 1. So those are our highest achieving students. When they're doing well, they take the test, they're passing at a 93%. And that's something that Lake Worth Middle should really be celebrated for. So I'm very proud of that. So let's talk about what we can do as a community really quickly. So a couple of things. The school district has really decided that it's very important that we talk to our community members and to our cities about attendance and how important it is. We are actually trying to put together a very solid presentation on attendance that we're going to be getting out to everyone so we can talk about why it's important and why you should try to help, because we know that getting kids to schools helps them to get to graduate, helps them to get reading on grade level, and having a supportive community does so much for them. We are focusing on attendance in 2 schools right now. We're putting extra resources to just really help with attendance here in Lake Worth. Barton Elementary and South Grade, they've been some of our problem areas, and we're going to be working even harder to get that to happen. We're sending actually staff over there that'll call parents and really be like, why haven't you brought your kid to school today? And is there anything that we can do to help? Because it's not about punishment, it's about supportive climates for these students. And sometimes parents just don't think it's an important thing to bring their kindergartner to school. So we want to make sure that they do that. So that's what we're doing. The next thing that we think is really important is looking at where a student is at. So if we had a student who missed 20 days last year and you get them to 10 days this year, that's really a good thing. We want to say where you're at and how we can get you to do a lot better at your schools. So, and show up to school more. So we're going to try to celebrate where they're at. And that's where I think you guys can come in, is looking at, as a community, how can you get more involved in your schools? And how can you recognize when a student comes? I think this is a really great thing where you can work with your businesses to recognize students going in. If there's a breakfast, being there to recognize the students, hand out those certificates. You guys are really important to the students. Being a part of this community, the way that you are, they know who you are. And if they do hear who you are, they are really excited. Especially, I know the mayor's had a chance to go speak to my daughter's class, and you were a way bigger highlight than I was. And so, yeah, it's very impressive. So that's one of the things that we can do. The other thing that we really work on is positive behavior support. So anytime a student does anything good, we want to recognize the good work that they do. That's really the importance. Also, keep in mind that your employees are also parents, and that you should be supporting them to make sure that they're getting their students to school every day. So that's a really important thing that I would love to see you guys work on. The other thing that's been kind of a couple of things that I really have liked. I know we've talked about Wi-Fi in the community. I don't know if that's still out there and interested for everyone. Things like that where the community can provide educational opportunities for the students, or even just access to the internet. It would be huge for communities such as Lake Worth, where they may not have that at home, because our students can learn from things like that. And I think that would be a wonderful thing. The other thing I've always wanted is to recognize the new teachers as they come to the community. Some of the other districts do that, other schools and other communities will do that, where they will actually have a breakfast or something to recognize when new teachers come into a community, or a principal does something, they will try to make sure to recognize them. I think that's something that we could do here in Lake Worth, and I think it would be wonderful to really create that community support around a new person in the community. So after saying that, I would like to, if I can, have Dr. Epps just come up and say hello. He is our brand new principal for Lake Worth High. He comes to us with an unbelievable amount of experience. He was he worked at Florida State University's K-12 school that they had. He also worked in Orlando as principal for 20 years, and he spent 12 years in the Navy. So he is ready to handle all the students that Lake Worth can put out. And so I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Epps.
Thank you all, Commissioner, Mayor,
Welcome.
School Board Member, Ms. Whitfield. I'm honored to be here and just to share the vision for growth and development. I grew up in a very humble environment, and I believe in working hard and giving more to others than of myself. I believe in making sure that every student have an opportunity to achieve success, and by doing that, making sure that I don't lump them together, but make sure I know them individually and know what their aspirations are in life. One of the first schools I've ever been to, Lake Worth High School, where mobility is not the issue, but attendance is. And so I met a student for the first time in May who was a student there, and he had 60 days. He just didn't come to school. He just said 7:30 class, which is too early for him. And this is a kid in the gifted program. So he figured I can just show up. So how do you motivate a couch to get up and move? So this kid didn't have no desire. But besides that, we have a lot of great things in place. The first thing is student achievement. Focus on student achievement. We had to simplify what we did on the campus. We had so many plates being spent on the little stick that we had to stop those and go back to and focus on the main goal, and that's student achievement. We realized that literacy was not happening. Our students could not read, and a lot of our teachers could not teach it properly. So this year is focused on literacy in every classroom, from PE, cafeteria, math, English, and everything. So I hired a reading teacher and a writing teacher to make sure we do the staff development and going throughout the school. The second thing is professional development. How do we train our teachers to be better teachers? How do we shift the mindset from how the school used to be 20 years ago? Now we have a new population and demographics. So we have to make sure we have 21st century, but 2017 strategies that really address the learning needs of our population. And what we were doing, we had all the mechanisms in place that had the appearance of a hardworking, great school, but we're using the wrong strategies with the wrong population. So we have to back it up and make sure we address the needs of our students. And then my big goal this year is to do more with community, parent and community engagement. How do we get more parents involved, community members involved? This year we started the 100 Young Men of Lake Worth. And this is where we teach them how to dress up, and we spend a lot of time on soft skills. How to shake hands, how to say thank you, how to look someone in the eye and be respectful. So I'm looking for volunteers to help with it. It can be young man, young woman, entrepreneurs. What skills will get you through the door? John Maxwell often say talent will get you through the door, but it's your character will keep you in the door. And I know that from hiring people all over the place. We want to teach them to be successful. And one thing I can guarantee you, we're putting the word community back in the community at Lake Worth High School. We're partnering with the city of Lake Worth with our swimming pool. We want to open up the gymnasium to have an over 50 basketball league, and we want to do something on the track to put the word community back in the community so you can come and have fun. And we want to make sure it happens, because I cannot do it by myself. If I'm the smartest guy in the room, I need to leave the room. But I need your help. I need your help in saying, let's partner, let's come together, let's make sure that the students have a future. And if we're not preparing you for college and career readiness or something after college or high school, and then fool on us. So we're making sure every student knows exactly what they want to do when they graduate from high school. And that could be military, it could be in the labor force, it could be I'm taking a gap year. It could be doing something, I'm going to college, I'm going to Duke. Our valedictorian's leaving Thursday, going to Vanderbilt, and on a full ride academic scholarship. We're talking about a guy whose home burned down 3 weeks before graduation. He had no clothes, no food. And we took him shopping. We got food, and I said we all circled the wagon to make it happen. But that's the culture that we are establishing and increasing at Lake Worth. And so we want to make sure it happens. So I'm counting on you all to come through. The doors are always open. Come by and see us. I can always use your help and your service. And I want to make sure that I am the right person. I believe in my heart I am, because it's a calling. It's a mission. It's not just a job. It's a mission. And where your heart is, it's where your treasures are. And I want to make sure that I'm there for the children, there for the parents, here for Lake Worth. And lastly, I did not just take a job just to take a job. I took a job to make a difference in the lives of our young people. They're the one who will come back in 20 years and say, thank you. I was giving up on life. You showed up. You encouraged me to give my very best. And today, I'm the mayor of Lake Worth. I'm the commissioner of Lake Worth. We want to thank you, Dr. Epps and Ms. Whitfield, for believing in us. That's what I want to hear, and that's what I'm aiming to do. And you have my word on that. All right?
Okay, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, hold on a second.
Oh, and this was gonna say, you have questions, go for it. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I wanted to personally invite you. We have our Mayor's Education Council meeting coming up in September. We're waiting for you all to get situated with everything and work out all your kinks at the start of the school year. But we're gonna be regrouping, so I'm looking forward to that. Erica, in place of some of the things that we came up with, I had a great meeting today. I'm not going to mention who with, but I had a terrific meeting today with someone who has offered us hope in regaining some of those VPK and middle school programs.
Yay.
So that was very exciting. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope you'll also be joining us for what I hope to be a much more active season this year with our group. And the other thing too is please, oh please, we finally got a chance to. Last year, I know that you were just starting out, and I missed graduation, and homecoming is like a big deal for us here. And we actually tried to bring back the homecoming parade through town, but it was in the middle of the day, and we couldn't get a lot of people out to visit the parade with the city manager's, of course, approval, right?
I love the parade.
Yeah, we want to bring it back in the evening so everyone can enjoy it after work. I know it's if we do it either the night before homecoming or the day of, but I'd like to get together with you about that. I just wanted to bring that out again. It used to be a big fanfare through the town where all the people could come out and watch the kids and get excited for them, and then go back with them to watch the games and be more involved. I come from a community where the city government was involved in the decisions for education, so this is different. When I moved in 1990 here to Florida, and it to be, church and state, so to speak, in regards to not being involved. So whatever way, wherever you need help, talk with this woman here. She knows. I'm a big advocate for our kids and our schools, and wherever you need me, and I'm sure my fellow commissioners would say the same, wherever you need us, we'll be there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Did you want Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, I have some questions about some of the drivers of low attendance.
Sure.
Have I guess those been discovered? And the two things that I'm thinking about are first of all, homelessness.
Yeah.
We have more than a few, I think it's close to 3,000 homeless students here in Palm Beach County, according to McKinney-Vento?
We're up to over 4 actually.
Okay,
as
we're
of
up to
last
over
year.
4. Okay, so that's not a small amount of homeless children. I imagine that would.
So that's the whole county.
Right.
It's a broad number, but we think it's usually about 10% of the students. So not everyone is actually reporting when they say that they are homeless. We actually we just ask them to fill out a form. And there's a couple of benefits that come with filling out the form. One of which is you can stay at your school, because we know that students who move schools are likely to lose about 2 months of education time in just changing schools. So if a student lives somewhere else and then ends up moving with their aunt or in an insecure housing situation, even if they're in a car, they can just stay in the school that they're at. We don't move them. That's part of the laws of McKinney-Vento.
Okay, and that's the HEART team facilitates that.
We actually have our own team on that we do at the
Okay.
school district, and it's run by Beth Leffler, and we
Okay.
have it's through our Safe Schools group. So
Okay.
we do our best to try to help, but homeless children are not students who have access to transportation every day. They may not have the ability to make it to school, and they are probably dealing with a whole lot of other factors in their life.
Okay.
So that will definitely affect it. Though I have to say, Highland has one of the highest homeless populations in the county. They're one of the ones that, being right next to Adopt a Family has to deal with that quite a bit. We do have a lot of the students that do make it. So, it depends on the students and what they're going through, but it definitely is a factor in attendance.
Okay, and the other thing is, I understand that Lake Worth Schools last year in the Day Without Immigrants was we had among the highest absences on that day.
Yep.
And I wonder, and I don't know if we have the ability to drill down on this at the school district, but I wonder if fears about deportation factor in to decisions that parents make to walk their kids to school, things like that.
Absolutely. I'm going to let Dr. Epps answer that question. Sounds
Okay.
like he has some good stories.
Yeah, matter of fact, when the immigration and ICE went into effect, attendance dropped almost 20%.
Wow.
A lot of the students are not coming. The parents do not want to lead them. A lot of the students do not want to come to school thinking, will I ever see my parents again? And so we definitely have seen that. It was already high, but it went much higher. And right now, I don't have an answer to convince them to come back to school. And in addition to that, that's not it's another cultural shift that I have to wrap my mind around, where 14 and 15-year-old girls are getting pregnant. And it's a culture thing to have more and get married at 16, 17. I know they just try to pass a bill, you gotta be 18, but they become young mothers and they're staying home with their mothers who's raising kids. So there's two factors, a culture shift and then the fear of being deported or identified or known, and we do have quite a few in Lake Worth High School.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more question, Erica. When you mentioned that you were breaking it down, that Dr. Avasa has been looking at, say, African American, Caucasian, Hispanic, and what about the Creole? Where does that factor in as an African?
So we don't do ethnicity currently in
Okay.
our schools as far as breakdowns. It has been suggested that we start looking at where people come from more specifically. So not Creole is in the language, but maybe when people come from Haiti, or if they're coming from a specific country, we could look at that. But we haven't been collecting that data so
That's
far.
right, I didn't realize that you could-
This
yeah.
year, we actually had our black males do better on graduation. Our Hispanic children did worse. And I think our white children stayed right about the same.
What I was just thinking of is because English is not their first language. I mean, while you're making these, changes, finding different ways to teach or different manners to do it that would actually increase the graduation rates or the test scores or whatever, because being the fact that the language is such a barrier initially, there's got to be maybe, like, I know some of the techniques that they have in Europe for different.
But we have our English
languages.
language learners, which is a class that we do for our students. So we actually do keep them in there, and so they get extra support until they've learned English enough to be able to be successful. So we put some resources into that, but with the drop in our Hispanic numbers this year, we're going to have to even look harder at this and see why it is that we are losing some of the students there. I think we're putting more emphasis on it than we've ever had in the past and really trying to delve into the data more. But even as we open it up, we're starting to find, bigger problems. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yes. One of the things I noticed when I got checked into Lake Worth in February, we had a very high Guatemalan population. And as I made my rounds in the classroom, I noticed that they were not engaged. And I'm asking the question, why are they not engaged? They're showing up. What are we doing? Well, I discovered that we had a vacancy for a classroom, a learning facilitator, someone who can help translate, but who spoke Kajabal.
Gotcha.
But I said, this thing has been vacant for 3 years. Have we turned over other rocks? So I went home. I'm on a mission now. And I just started thinking. We received students who graduated from our school who are currently in college, who came here from Guatemala 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I went back to school and I said, can I hire these students from Palm Beach State to come back and be tutors at our school? And the district said, I don't know, that's a great idea. I said, why haven't you all thought about this? So they worked the numbers and called back and said, Dr. Epps, you can hire those kids from Palm Beach State to come back for 20 hours a week, whatever you want to. So now we have those students going to come back as tutors and to sit in the classroom to help, because the kids are sitting there, the teachers are trying, but no one can get the language. But I kept going deeper and asking why. 5 whys, you will find the root cause.
Well, that's what I was trying to get to, is to say
Yeah,
that
there.
that the language is the thing, because these kids are going home and teaching their families how to speak
Yes.
English too. And
Well, we were missing a major point. The kids are showing up eager to learn because they're the spokesperson for the family. The students at Palm Beach State, the Guatemalan, said they are honored and so excited to get a job to come back to the school to tutor. So they're going to be coming in, sit in those classrooms. So when the teacher is teaching, he or she can pull those students to the side and can translate. And I guarantee you engagement will increase, which means achievement will increase as well. It was a simple problem. It was a major problem, simple solution, and we have already in motion making it work.
thank you both very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you so much for all this time. I really appreciate it.
Up next, our presentation, Stop the Violence, from Captain Bear from PBSO. I want to remind commissioners too that when the presentation is playing, to refrain from any comment, because we've had some technical issues when the video is on. When we were talking, it stopped the video from showing at home, and from the video was on, it was stopping people from hearing So just during the presentation, save any of your questions or comments till after the video. Thank you. Welcome.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Captain Bear from District 14, and I have Mrs. Hinson from South Grade Elementary here tonight. This is not a Stop the Violence presentation from me. I just saw that on the agenda. Ms. Hinson got with me a couple months ago, wanted to do a presentation, show a brief video on the anti-gang, anti-bullying program that we do every year at North and South Grade. So that's what this is, and we'll show the video, and I'll give you my thoughts on what is my favorite program, and answer any questions.
Thank you.
Neighborhood gangs try to recruit 4th and 5th grade students. Some students have challenges which make them more at risk of joining a gang. Based on 5 criteria, each year Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office handpicks 20 South Grade elementary. Neighborhood gangs try to recruit 4th and 5th grade students. Neighborhood gangs try to recruit 4th and 5th grade students. Some students have challenges which make them more at risk of joining a gang. Based on 5 criteria, each year Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office handpicks 20 South Grade elementary students who they believe would benefit the most from an intervention which puts them elbow to elbow with law enforcement mentors. The officers come an hour each Wednesday for 10 weeks to help students build self-propelled Lego cars. After the cars are built, the officers host neighborhood gangs try to recruit 4th and 5th grade students. Some students have challenges which make them more at risk of joining a gang. Based on 5 criteria, each year Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office handpicks 20 South Grade elementary students who they believe would benefit the most from an intervention which puts them elbow to elbow with law enforcement mentors. The officers come an hour each Wednesday for 10 weeks to help students build self-propelled Lego cars. After the cars are built, the officers host a race and take students to Legoland. Sometimes they do home visits and take students to shop with a cop. Here's what students had to say about their time with their Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office mentors.
Well, really hard building the cars. Like when we took them out, like there were so many pieces. I thought I couldn't do it.
Pieces were like just people to come here, arrest people and all that, not to like help, just arrest people, take them to jail. But now I notice they're not just for that. I thought like they were mean and
Neighborhood gangs try to recruit 4th and 5th grade students. Some students have challenges which make them more at risk of joining a gang. Based on 5 criteria, each year Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office handpicks elementary students who they believe would benefit the most from an intervention which puts them elbow to elbow with law enforcement mentors. The officers come an hour each Wednesday for 10 weeks to help students build self-propelled Lego cars. After the cars are built, the officers host a race that takes students to Legoland. Sometimes they do home visits and take students to shop with a cop. Here's what students had to say about their time with their Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office mentors.
Really hard building the cars. Like when we took them out, like there were so many pieces. I thought I couldn't do it.
pieces were like just people to come here, arrest people and all that, not to like help, just arrest people, take them to jail. They're not just for that. I thought like they were mean and they were like help. But then when they tried to help us, I realized that they were nice, kind, they were in the team, they were helpful, and they didn't let nobody down.
I felt so scared. Like it was like the first time a policeman helped me with something.
I felt like amazing. Like when the police like help me. Policemen are like people that know to help everyone. They don't do it just for.
They make me feel better by staying with them, and they make me learn a lot by to not be mean to others. So I'm the best officer I've ever met.
When I see people getting arrested, I thought that they were mean. So then after I met them, I was like they're kind. It was amazing. We had a race. We had to go down the ramp and people won, and it was fun because they put 2 cones, and if you make it in the cone, you win $1. It was very cool. The best thing about the race, it was the ramp. It was super hot. And it was fun watching our cars going down. Some flipped over, but some just stayed the same way. It was fun watching it. You know, say how you are. Well, I want to stay with them because they're very nice.
I learned about the police that about how generous they are to give us this program and give us to buy us the Legos and take us to Legoland.
Like I used to bully other people, but now I noticed that how they showed us that they helped us. Now I know that it's not good. So then they taught me how not to be a bystander, not to be a bully, not to hurt other people's feelings. And then it changed me a lot.
And then when I got to meet them, I realized that they were nice. It was fun because you get to create a car that you never created.
When you're doing bad stuff, they can pissed. They're not gonna let me do bad stuff. That's why I like them.
I'm not scared anymore. I used to because how they look from the outside, but not anymore. They don't want nobody to be like always at the bottom, and they want everybody to be in the top.
They had so much fun with us, letting us build cars with them.
If they didn't encourage me, I wouldn't found on that. I trusted them, so I went, and it was fun.
I thought it was all on our own, but he was showing us never to give up, just keep on going. At some point, what you want, you might get it. Just work hard for it. And then it made me really happy to see what was happening. And when I got finished, I was really proud about myself and proud for the police helping us out. And I knew that I wasn't alone.
A little bit worried or something, but now I'm like they're good friends.
That's cool.
Thank you. As I said, this is my favorite program that we do of the many in District 14, Lake Worth. Currently, we're doing this program at North and South Grade Elementary. I would like to someday expand it to Highland and Barton because it would be desperately needed. It's a matter of, like anything else, manpower and money, and partnering with Legoland. We have to make sure that they're on board with that. But that's my goal for the future. The schools, we work closely with Ms. Hinson and then one of the teachers at North Grade. And the reason we work at those two schools is we started the anti-gang program at South Grade. This was the 5th year, and we started the anti-bullying program at North Grade about 4 years ago. And they're both one of a kind. Last year we combined them, so we had the relationships already established at those two schools, so that was the natural transition. But I would like to, make those relationships at the other two. The teachers and the school staff picked the most at-risk kids at both schools. Based on their family situations, their history, their bios. A lot of these bios I go over with the teachers and their nightmares, their family situations, family members in gangs, family members in prison or killed. And we pick those children not only because they're the most at risk, but they're also, in many cases, they're the ones being looked up to for the wrong reasons at these schools. So we're hoping that since we can only get a limited number in, that they then change their behavior, as I would say 98% have, and they're looked up to for the right reasons going forward, and they help a few other kids. What I like about it, we teach them while they're building cars, so they don't, they're having fun while they're learning good life lessons, such as why not to be a bully or to join a gang. And we like to catch them before middle school. When I first started, many years ago, we wanted to catch them in high school, then we went to middle school. Now we've identified that you really got to change the behavior and change their ways before middle school, because raising two kids myself, middle school was tougher than high school. So we catch them before that, and we keep in touch. A lot of the deputies keep in touch with these kids out in the neighborhood. They've invited us to their graduations, and a lot of them have gone from some of the worst students academically to magnet programs in middle school. So that's a huge change. The first couple of years we would get 19 out of 20 in each group, and one would move or not make it. Last year we got all 40 out of 40 at the two schools, so that was a win. But I'll entertain any questions you have.
Thank you. Good job, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm glad we got the volume on for you, Ms. Henson. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank
Second
you.
time's the charm.
Thank you again for this presentation. I believe you do this presentation annually and remind us of the good work that you're doing. One of the questions I don't think I've ever asked, or I don't think it's been asked, is what is the cost per student? From the cost of the materials for the car itself, for the trip. I mean, is there a dollar value that you could share with us that maybe gives us a better idea of how maybe we could individually or collectively help in some way going forward?
Sure, I don't have it on the top of my head an exact per child cost. Legoland funds the entry into the park, so to add, I would have to get them to add that, and then we do the rest. The schools fundraise with us, and then we have our charity golf scramble, where we pay for the meals, and we give each kid a $25 for a souvenir while they're there. These kids, I mean, some of them, last year, one of them had never been to a McDonald's. We take them to McDonald's on the way home. A kid had never been to McDonald's. The year before, my wife always goes, we need help with we have a lot of the female children, and she came out of the rest stop bathroom, and the little girl said that was the nicest bathroom she'd ever been in, and it was the Turnpike rest stop. So, I mean, these kids, some of them never leave their neighborhood. They've lived in Lake Worth, they've never been to the beach, they've never been to public. So, those are the stories we're hearing from them.
Chairman Russo.
Since you mentioned
Sorry,
it,
excuse me, you had another
I
follow-up.
did,
Sorry,
thank you.
please.
And, I guess the other big question I have is obviously because of the financial constraints and the manpower perhaps, 20 really isn't enough. And you mentioned the other two schools that probably would greatly benefit. I think I'd like to learn more about what maybe the city can do directly. If I don't know what we can do to help move this along, but when you start hearing stories about kids that just have never experienced things that we all take for granted,
Things we take for granted.
it's something to be. That's an eye opener, and I think it's something we need to be focused on expanding and making sure that those stories are not so prevalent in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Russo.
since you brought it up, can you talk a little bit about the golf tournament and how people can sponsor it and get involved?
Sure. We're just in the beginning phases of getting donations and whole sponsors. If you play golf or you know people that play golf, by all means, we're looking for foursomes. It's going to be the weekend before Thanksgiving this year. We moved it back to a cooler time of year, and they didn't raise us for the season rates, so we did good. This year we're actually going to Westchester down in Boynton Beach. Again, they've taken great care of us this year, and that the more money we save on that end, the more money we can put on the other end. But we have whole sponsors. We have like gold, silver, and bronze sponsors. We've already got 2 of those in, but we'll be looking for you. Every year, the businesses in the city and everything, most of them all help out. CWS is going to be our main sponsor again this year. Walmart just gave us $1,000 unexpectedly, which was very nice. And Duffy's is headquartered in the city, as you know, and they're one of our main sponsors as well. But we're always looking for more. The more we get, the more kids we can get in these programs.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to ask, where are you holding that golf tournament again?
Westchester Country Club in western Boynton Beach this year. It's the first time we're going there.
Really?
Yes.
We need to chat.
Okay. I was expecting that.
Just, I'll leave it for another time. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Cap. Appreciate it. Thank you, Rebecca. Awesome as always. Thank you so much for helping our kids. Okay, up next, recognition of the Lake Worth Shark Tank winners. Woo! Okay, come on up here. All right, I'm coming now. I'm going in. Do I have everything here, Deb?
I believe so.
Okay. Where's Miss Reggie? Miss Reggie, will you come up here, please? I can't can't do this without you. Would you like to give us a description of the program and what you did? You're gonna, okay. Please, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katina Jean Jacks. I'm a student at Lake Worth High and also Palm Beach State, and I was the first place Shark Tank winner. And also, this is Tasha.
Yeah, my name's Anastasia, and that's what the government calls me by. But I go by Tasha, and I was second place in the Shark Tank.
So basically, we created a youth version of the Shark Tank, if any of you guys watched the show. And so I go to For the Children, and For the Children partnered up with eRoadmap Corporation. And basically what they did was they came in once a week and they taught us how to be our own boss, how to be an entrepreneur. And we learned how to be an entrepreneur. We learned many laws of business, not only laws of business, but like tips and advices for life. And continue.
Yeah, they taught us about personal development and self-esteem things and building our better selves. And it was a great experience, and it taught us how to be great teen entrepreneurs, or as Ms. Valika likes to call us, teenpreneurs. So, yeah.
And on top of learning all these things, they also gave us $50 a week to put into our business, $50 a week to just start our business. And For the Children, it's located on 1700 Wingfield Drive. And many people say that it's a bad place to have a youth empowerment center, but many people don't realize that's where all the youth is. And there's not, because when I was in middle school, I didn't go to For the Children, but there was like after school activities. They weren't good after school activities. They were not what you guys would approve of. So having somewhere to go after school, having somewhere, a support, and they give us food, and who likes to turn down food? Having somewhere to go, somewhere to eat, a person to look to talk to is really helpful. So it's right in our community. So I thank the Department of West Palm Beach for funding us and giving us all the support that we need, because without them we wouldn't be, running.
Yeah. And I also want to say thank you because I've been at FTC since like kindergarten, and they basically raised me to be the person I am today. I've been excelling in school, straight A's. I'm dual enrolled right now, planning to go on university next year, and I'm really excited. And I want to thank Miss Reggie especially because, she's like our mom with this whole organization, and I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. So basically, at the end of the entrepreneurship class, we had a Shark Tank, and we basically presented to four judges our business and what we plan to do with our business. And speaking it is not going to do that much, but I don't know if you guys understand how big that is for us to be 15, 16, 17, 18 and already talking about owning our own business. Like, statistics say that I might not even graduate high school. So to have people in my life that support me and want me to do better, like Miss Reggie and Palm Beach County, is really helpful. And what I would like to say is that I hope that you guys continue to fund programs like For the Children, the police department, the school system, because we're the youth and we are your future. Yeah.
Okay, now I understand our third place winner couldn't be here tonight. Okay, but forgive me, guys. I'm getting over this horrible cold thing. I'm past that part, but if I start coughing, like I'm about to do, I'm still the remnants. Anyway, our first place winner, the Lake Worth Youth Empowerment Center student and first place Shark Tank winner, Katina Jean Jacques. Is that right? Now, here, get this. It's Cookies and Cream Cosmetics. 18-year-old Katina presented her new business, Cookies and Cream Cosmetics. Her goal is to empower girls and ladies of different hues, Her customized makeup line is being expanded now to serve not just the Palm Beach County community, but also to meet the demands of her nationwide clients. Congratulations. And our second place winner, 17-year-old Anastasia Jean Mary. Yay! She took home second place for her new business, Orsist. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. Whatever you need organized, your school locker, your closets, your filing system, Orsist is the solution. She even created a life binder. I think we all need one of those. For you, Anastasia.
Thank you so much.
And we will save this one. Shania. Okay? Thank you all so much. And now just take a look at this though before we start. This is how they mark it. Is that cute or what? Now, is this going to be the start of many?
Yes.
I love it. Okay, please come back here. Next time I want to be a judge, all right? Thank you all so much. Bye. Okay. Ursula Paul, please would you mind coming up? Come here for a second. And our final presentation is a proclamation declaring August 31st, 2017 as Overdose Awareness Day. And I'll read this to you, and if you would like to say a few words afterwards, I'd love to have you. Whereas addiction is an American Medical Association defined disease, and the stigma associated with addiction must be addressed so that no one feels shame or disgrace over a legal or illegal drug poisoning. And whereas drug poisoning is the #1 cause of injury deaths in the nation, with an accidental drug overdose death occurring every 11 minutes, surpassing deaths from motor vehicle accidents or gun homicides. And whereas, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 52,404 people died in the U.S. as a result of drug poisoning, or 144 people per day during 2015, the most current reporting year. According to the Florida Medical Examiners Commission, there were 2,191 accidental deaths in the state of Florida during 2015 caused by a prescription drug poisoning. And whereas, according to the Florida Agency for Healthcare Administration, there were 4,926 hospital patients admitted for prescription opioid or heroin drug poisoning during just the first 6 months of 2016 in all of Florida, including 421 patients in Broward County, 562 in Palm Beach County, and 284 in Miami-Dade County. And whereas, by acknowledging all those who have been affected by prescription drug poisoning, we help the general public understand its effects on the community of Lake Worth, Florida. And whereas the city of Lake Worth remains committed to raising awareness in order to combat stigma and educate our community about prescription drug poisoning prevention. Now, therefore, I, Pam Triolo, Mayor of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim August 31st, 2017 as Overdose Awareness Day. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mayor, Commissioners, and good evening, everybody. I'm very grateful to be here tonight to receive the Lake Worth Proclamation to declare August 31st an International Overdose Awareness Day. My name is Ursula Paul. I'm a registered nurse at the Recovery Research Network in Atlantis at the JFK Medical Center. I have worked in addiction for the last 15 years. And like you, I have seen the devastation of this terrible disease that has caused our families and communities and our nation. Too many lives have been lost not by acknowledging this disease as a chronic illness. We must stop stigmatizing and criminalizing this disease and provide support, treatment, and solutions. We must work as a team to provide resources, confront the issue, and combat this epidemic. Please join us on the 31st of August for our Tri-County Fed Up Rally at FAU in Boca Raton campus, hosted by the Southeast Florida Recovery Advocates. We will have representation from Palm Beach County, represented by Vice Mayor Melissa McKinley, will be our keynote speaker. Broward County, represented by Commissioner Chip LaMarca, and Miami-Dade County, represented by Deputy Mayor Russell Benford. Again, I'm very honored to accept this proclamation on behalf of SEFRA. Thank you so very much. I also have a few flyers if anybody is interested to get some information about the August 31st event. You can just go pick them up from me later.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you very much for coming. We're moving on to commission liaison reports and comments. Commissioner Hardy?
Sure. I'll start with the C-51. There are a few things that happened over the course of the last week related to the C-51. The first thing is that we had the first meeting of our advisory board or advisory committee here in Lake Worth. I think it was very successful. I think there were lots of questions that concerned parties had about that particular project, and I think many of them were answered at that particular meeting, in which Dr. Kim Delaney of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council provided some information, along with Brent Whitfield, who is working for one of the engineering firms that's working on this project. Not all questions were answered. Obviously, you know, it's going to take a while to get this project through, but I'm glad that we had that meeting, and I'm glad that our residents were able to get some information about it. The other thing is that on Friday, which was 2 days after the first meeting of our advisory board, basically the permittable plans that Taylor Engineering came up with were, I don't want to say revealed, but were made public and discussed openly by members of the coalition. And that was an informative meeting for a lot of folks. You know, now we've got a permittable set of plans with a good estimate, with a very sizable contingency built in. Obviously, we still have to have conversations about funding. But, you know, frankly, this is a project in which the benefits relative to the cost are tremendous. And it is, in my opinion, and I've said this publicly, a no-brainer for us to support this project. This is why I'm asking that we put on the agenda as soon as we can a resolution of support. The way that 9 other cities have: Boynton Beach, Green Acres, Haverhill, Lantana, Hypoluxo, Riviera Beach, West Palm Beach, Lake Clark Shores, even the county commission has, you know, they've all passed resolutions of support for this. We don't have to have every step in place to support the idea. And so I'm asking that we put a resolution of support on the agenda, and I'm asking that, of course, my commissioners all support it. There are a few concerns that people had about environment, you know, about you know, safety concerns, and about whether there would be a knowledgeable operator. I think those questions were answered as well. The other thing is I had a really wonderful meeting with a member of the school board. Her name is Dr. Deborah Robinson. And, you know, there are people who you meet in life, and, you know, sometimes meeting them is almost a religious experience, because they're just so dynamic and so passionate about what it is that they do and their advocacy. And meeting Dr. Robinson was one of those moments for me. You know, I left so inspired and encouraged meeting with her. And one of the things that she sent me to, and she also sent Commissioner Robinson to this. It was the Racial Equity Institute, which was put on by the school board. It was a 2-day sort of, I don't want to call it a training because it certainly wasn't that, but it certainly opened my eyes to the ways in which our history, it has a momentum. And I certainly, I'm an African-American man. I teach social studies, I teach civics, and I learned a lot at that training. And I hope that we can get some of the leaders here in this city to do that training as well, because I think it would be extraordinarily beneficial. If I may, Madam Mayor, stop me if I may not.
No.
But as I said, obviously I'm an African-American man, right? And I've experienced racism in my life. The first time I heard the N-word was in kindergarten, and it was directed at me by another kindergartner. And obviously I'm well aware of our history. And so, the events of this weekend were horrifying for me. I did not think that in my lifetime I would see men rallying around a Confederate monument with torches, chanting such vile things as "Jews shall not replace us." I was really hungry for leadership and healing this weekend, and I didn't get it. And I'm extraordinarily disappointed about that. And I hope that as a community, as a city, we can come together, yes, but that we won't do that at the expense of acknowledging right and wrong. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of things, start with a couple of fun things. I had the opportunity this past week to attend another For the Children event. They had a talent show, if you will, for their children, from the little munchkins all the way up to the older ones. And I got to tell you something, I had a really, really good time. And when I got there, I was under the false assumption that somehow I was going to be a judge or asked to be a judge. And I'm so thankful that I was mistaken, because there is no way I'm ever going to judge anything when you have a bunch of children up there and their parents are sitting there. If the kids don't get you behind the curtain, the parents are going to catch you in the parking lot. So I tip my hat to the folks who did the judging, but there were some really talented children there, and the little ones in particular, they had probably a dozen little girls, and they all had matching polka dot outfits and dresses. It was just really pretty cool. I enjoyed it immensely, and I hope that next year more of us can go and be a part of that or witness it for ourselves. Also, as some of you may know, the Leisure Services Department is in the process of putting together some sort of a promotional video for the city. I'm sure most of you in this room did not have the opportunity to see the B-roll that was shot of the commission as far as our participation in that video. But it was somewhat of a good time. We learned very quickly who among the five of us can dance and who can't dance. And
was there any one of us?
Was there any one of us that could dance?
But somehow I got the pleasure of a little extra. I was asked to bring my dogs down to Bryant Park as another set of B-roll. And I got to tell you, I love dogs. I love animals to death. But I'm too old to try to get 3 dogs out of the car. So, I mean, they boom, right out the door. One's wrapped around the fence. The other one's leash is wrapped around the other one's neck. The third one's stuck in the door jamb. And if it wasn't for the city staff helping me get them apart, it was a good time. I hope that the video comes out nicely, and I think it will. The kids that were used that were from the summer camp programs, and they were really having a good time. And this is just another example of the creativity and the passion that our staff and administration has for the city, and its willingness to showcase the best that Lake Worth has to offer. Also, speaking of education, I have taken it upon myself over the last, year or so to try to reach out to different members of the school board, because as a member of the League of Cities, former president of the County League of Cities, we've really struggled in our ability to effectively partner with the schools on a local and a county-wide basis as far as mentoring or doing anything we possibly can do to support the whole, education piece from the government perspective. And I've been meeting with school board members individually, trying to express those concerns. And I'm hearing, from, is she still here? I guess she's not here. School board member Whitfield, I'm hoping that those days are going to get better for us, and it's going to be easier for us to be able to approach an elementary school or a high school, and they'll be more receptive to allowing us in, or other members of the community to, to help in that regard. And finally, on a not quite so pleasant note, but sort of a pleasant note, I don't know how to phrase that, but many of you are aware that one of our deputies was assaulted over the weekend, which completely took the wind out of my sails that morning when I heard about it. I called Captain Barrett to find out what had happened, and was of course very pleased to find out that the injury to the deputy was probably very minimal. He was right back to work. But I got to thinking about it after the initial, I don't know if shock is the right word, wore off later in the day and into the next day, about how lucky we are to have a professional sheriff's office the way we do. Because it seems like rarely there's a day goes by that you don't hear about some officer someplace in the United States getting in an altercation with a suspect, and it's national news. And I can't tell you obviously what happened here, but I got to tell you, I have to commend the officer, the deputy, for his restraint. I mean, it could have been very easily for things gone a different direction, and he could have used his weapon. He could have done a lot of different things, and he didn't do it. And I dare say that was probably a tribute to his training and the professionalism of this sheriff's office. And I'm very, very proud of that officer, and very thankful that he wasn't injured very badly. And I think we should all be thankful for that level of professionalism, and keep that officer and all of our deputies in our prayers, as they do a very difficult job every day. Thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Marshall?
First of all, I too attended the Blue Way Trails meeting. I've been attending for years as they've been working on some of the projects. This week I sent an email to the city manager asking him for that letter of support. So I support Commissioner Hardy's suggestion that we get that on the agenda as soon as possible. I attended the Palm Beach County League of Cities Roundtable Luncheon. Always great ideas coming from the League of Cities and our other leaders. Also attending the Florida League of Cities tomorrow. I'll be traveling early in the morning because our first meeting is at 8:30 in Orlando for medical marijuana. So I want to make sure that I'm there for that. I also want to echo Commissioner Hardy's thoughts. I am not a African American man. However, I am a gay man. And, coming out gay at a very young age, I too remember not the N-word, but faggot, queer, things that were used back then. And hate is hate. And the group, I'm not going to say the name out loud, but if you Google the group that was one of the lead groups in Virginia, the first thing that pops up is homosexuality. And I have to admit that I have never seen it worded like that. They break it down point by point, even making a statement on why gay and lesbians should not be parents. And then the second goes into Jews. So it's quite articulate, and I found it very hateful. At the end of the day, hate is hate, and I echo Commissioner Hardy on that. And it goes back and it hits home because the young man, Juan Cruz, that we did a moment of silence for at the beginning of the meeting was indeed a hate crime. The gentleman said, "In my country, we kill you people," and he waited outside and he shot the guy. So that cannot be tolerated and will not be tolerated. And again, hate is hate.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
I'm not going to elaborate a whole lot, but I hate to start with Charlottesville, but I'm a Jewish man, and I think we're pretty well represented up here for those people that really get off on hate. There's no thought behind it. It's a behavior that is just hate, and they're terrorists because they terrify me, and the opposite of
that may be beyond my abilities at the moment.
shit. Anyhow, I went down to, I didn't know what to do. I went down to New Hope Zion Temple for church on Sunday, and they were a congregation of loving people, and I looked for them for leadership. I don't know what to do. All they came away with was, if you don't like the person, pray for them anyhow. And I thought that was good enough for me, but it really isn't. I want to ignore these people, but we can't. They're haters, and they're the disgusting population of Americans that I'm sorry that we have. So that said, I also went to the C51 coalition meeting, and I support it because it's going to benefit the greater good of Palm Beach County. The devil's in the details, and I also have I hope a healthy skepticism of the benefits to Lake Worth. A lot of the details aren't worked out yet, and I would like to see Lake Worth benefit equally to all the other communities that it is going to benefit. So it needs to be watched with the idea of benefiting Lake Worth in mind, not just the other. I went to the Racial Equity Institute and got an education on the effect of government on racism in our country from day one. That really astounded me, that when you had a choice between doing the right thing and gaining over other people, apparently gaining over other people is more important than doing the right thing. And I would hope that our government locally does the right thing. I hope nationally it starts to do the right thing. And I also look forward to, what I came away with, and it was fantastic. Dr. Robinson was understanding of my communication, and I'm looking forward to what we can do now that we've learned the history of the racism that we have experienced so far. Glad to see that the interviews for the internal auditor are over, and that we're going to maybe have that on the next agenda. The fishing pier is part of the. It's a tremendous. I probably shouldn't say liability, but it's a liability, and we need to address it sooner rather than later. Whether we have to take emergency funds or whatever, but
clarify, it's not the beach pier.
The fishing pier at Spillway Park.
Thank you.
Thank you,
and to Commissioner Maxwell's comment about the sheriff, emphasizes the importance of a body cam on our sheriffs, and I'm hoping that someday soon Sheriff Bradshaw finds some money in his fantastic budget to initiate body cams on at least our officers in Lake Worth. we have a timeline for the move. You want to?
No.
We have a timeline for the beach property enhancement, and it's moving slowly, but it is moving forward. And I wanted to wish Teacher O'Mari a good and successful year. Starting off, he's survived the second day.
I'll take sleep over that.
I also wanted to thank Rebecca Hinson, who left in her training of civility. That stuff goes a long way towards behavior all the way through life. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your beautiful comments and insights. I know we're all coming from a lot of different angles, but we've got a lot of stuff going on in the world, and even right here in our own backyard. I want to again express my condolences to the family of Juan Cruz. I know we had a moment of silence earlier, happening just across from City Hall, but and that, and on top of what happened this weekend, and on top of everything else, it's just been. Everyone knows I'm a big softie when it comes to stuff, but it makes your heart heavy when we're looking at it. And then we see these kids come in here and waltz right up here to the microphone and say these things, and we wonder how the world is going to survive in the next generations. And I think with all these computers and all these, devices and all these things, people have forgotten, me, I'm flapping my gums all the time. They've forgotten how to talk to each other. They've forgotten how to communicate with each other. How are they ever going to run this country if they can't speak to one another? If they're afraid to answer the telephone, if they're afraid to do this, and I get all worked up, and then I see these kids come up here and I go, oh, shoo. All right, thank goodness. But we can't tolerate hate, I mean, this community has stood up in many, many ways, but as a community, we have to figure out, and this is going to happen on a lot of different levels. Do we want to make a statement as a city, or do we want to be the kind of city that we really are and just make a difference? Think about that. When we make decisions on all these things, we can make a statement, or we can continue to make a difference. And we're going to have to use that ideology to attack a lot of our problems in the coming years. Because everyone's so caught up in making statements and saying this and doing that, whatever. But yet, when something happens in our community, we all come together. I'd rather make a difference every single time, and I'm sure most of you would too, if not all of you. And that's when we come together and we get on the scene. With that said, I did not know about Juan Cruz's funeral that happened this past weekend. I'm not on social media. I heard that's where it was shared. I go on social media only for work purposes, but not for personal purposes, so I wasn't aware of it. I think that, it would be nice if we could do something for the family, or I don't know what, but I'd like to have a conversation about that. Moving on to other stuff, in reference to what the Vice Mayor said, I'm glad you had that meeting, Vice Mayor, to let you know, too, you are welcome to come, if it's okay by sunshine laws, in September when we have our Education Council. That's one great thing of the Education Council. We got really far along and then hit a wall when that project kind of got stuck. But we have all the principals and vice principals and teachers and administrators that are coming to these meetings to help really tell what are the challenges in our schools. No, we're not looking at the county, we're looking just at our schools. And the biggest needs that we found were more VPK, and the middle school kids, programs from them after school. That's when they're getting in trouble. And we had talked, I see Pastor Voss out there, we had talked about it too a long time ago, and I had tried to connect you with the YMCA. We had programs that were coming in, and that unfortunately didn't open up for us the way it was supposed to. In my world, it'd be perfect if in every one of our districts we could have a place where we could have VPK covered from 7 a.m. in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and have middle school programs from 4 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night. So that would help bridge the gap to pick up these kids and do that, and provide mentorship programs from them and good examples and programs like we saw here tonight. I had a great meeting with, yes, Dr. Robinson, who you mentioned earlier, who's my new angel. And it was a great discussion, and she found a lot of the same issues that I have. So what we're facing here locally is not something that other schools aren't feeling as well. When you serve the underserved in the community, just like we talked with with our new principal of Lake Worth High School, you're going to run into a lot of challenges, and a lot of these kids, they are the education for their families that come from other countries. They're the ones who are teaching them the language. They're the ones that are teaching them the culture, and they're the ones who are teaching them the rules of Lake Worth, when to put out their trash, or when to do. They are so much an informant for these things that there's a lot of outreach that could be happening here. And I'm excited to see it happening on many levels. So I'm looking forward to what's going to come in 2017-18, because I can tell you it's going to be great. As for the C-51, I heard it mentioned a number of times. I was not at that meeting. I showed up at the end because I had to work my other job that day, but I showed up towards the end. And I got a chance to talk with some people afterwards. I would just like to state for the record, if you're going to bring that before us for consensus, much like the John Prince Park when we were talking about baseball in the past, or other cities did, or whatever, you can support something in idea and concept, but there's still a lot of things I believe that need to be worked out, from liability issues being one. I never want to sit as a city and put us in jeopardy of someone getting hurt, killed, drowned, whatever, without thinking of the repercussions of that. I also, it's my own personal opinion, have concerns about being responsible for an operation there when we already have so many operations that we are strapped financially. We'd have to bring in skilled workers to handle some of those things. I have always been, and I've said here before, that I am in support of the project, so I don't want there to be any discussion about that. But I think, along with some of the members that were there, have some concerns about mainly safety, public safety issues, and that was what the whole thing was, mitigating what's going to happen in our residents' backyard. When it comes to crime, when it comes to safety, when it comes to liability, when it comes to how things are going to operate. And I think that there are many questions that board will be able to tackle and handle. I hope they have the ability to step up and ask all the questions that they want to ask and get those answers from the committee, and work with people that are working on it to get those answers so that they can feel comfortable and confident when and if this project happens. But I just want to state for the record that I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. I think conceptually, from an economic development standpoint, I've been supportive of it before many of you were even elected to office or even thought about it. So, I'm there, but I think that we have to be grown-ups, and we can't, anything that gets rushed, to me, always red flags me. Move, go, do, whatever. Slow it down, have the conversations, talk with people about it, get the answers that you need, and whatever. And I think everyone's going to be a lot happier if you get those things done and you move forward with respect for the people that are impacted by it. But other than that, like I said, anything else on it? I'm going to move because we went long on this. Moving on. Oh, I had one more thing. I'm sorry. I would like to thank Mr. Whitall, who sent a note. We heard about pickleball and tennis back and forth a million times, thanking us for keeping the tennis program alive in Lake Worth. Yay. Thank you so much for writing. Also, Lake Worth Arts wins Cultural Affairs Grant for Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead celebration. Anyone get a chance to go last year? It was absolutely incredible and heartfelt, and it was just something. And they won, let me see what it is.
$14,000 grant.
$14,000, and they'll be putting on the event again this year, so we hope you'll watch for information on that. It'll be happening at the former shuffleboard courts, now called
The Arts Center.
the Arts Center.
Lake Worth Arts Center.
Lake Worth Arts Center.
Hatch.
Well, that's
They're called the Hatch.
Is that hash?
Hatch.
the hatch. It
No, I
hasn't
thought
been
like
announced.
hashtag.
Hashtag.
Dun, 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 dun. Sorry.
Hatch.
I was thinking hashtags.
It's artsy.
Okay, moving on away from us, thank you. Moving on to public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. First card is, that's not an on-agenda item, and this is Katie McGivern.
Katie McGivern, 2121 Collier Avenue. It was such a nice meeting till now. As far as what happened over the weekend, that's not my America. I don't think it's our America. We have two fringe hate groups, crazy people, Antifa. We have white supremacists. That's not us. That's not Lake Worth. So even though it's run on a 24/7 loop, don't let your heart be heavy. Think of the kids we saw tonight. Now, I'm appalled. Sorry, guys. I'm appalled that each of you sitting on this dais thinks it's okay to accept a $500 a month car allowance. especially in a town where you had to go begging to the residents and businesses just to fix the potholes in our streets. My sister thought it was okay. She said, well, that's $100 per commissioner. I said, no, you don't understand. They get $500 each per month. I think that's appalling, especially in a city our size. Item I on the consent agenda does not belong on the consent agenda. In the backup and justification for this item, there was a statement. Residents in the community have been very satisfied with the law enforcement services provided by PBSO and the positive impact that they have had in addressing criminal activities in the community. Well, who wrote this? Where was the survey I missed? Was there one? And if so, I apologize. Otherwise, I would request that until a citywide survey is done, that statement be removed. I'm a resident, and I'm not satisfied with the services that PBSO is providing to us. Quite simply, we are not getting enough bang for the very large amount of bucks PBSO is getting from us, especially in the areas of neighborhood patrolling and neighborhood speed control. Believe me, this is in no way a reflection on our individual officers. I respect our PBSO and what they're forced to deal with on a daily basis. And if I were given a longer time to speak, I would certainly elaborate on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I had 3 minutes, you had another minute.
40 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Any more cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Amoroso, seconded by?
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Hardy. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Public hearing, let's take a quick break now and then we'll go up to the public hearings. Thank you. Sit back down, Mr. Waters. Oh, if not, we can go through them all at the same time.
Can we define the recess?
Define the recess?
Like in terms of minutes?
7 minutes.
How about 5 minutes?
5 minutes?
7.
I think, last time I checked, I was in control of the meeting. Did everyone remember that?
We're asking.
Well, just so that we know what.
Okay,
time
well,
after
that was, okay, can I define the minutes? And then you all talked haphazardly. So one at a time. You would like to define the minutes. Would anyone else like to define the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, the minutes being, okay. So are you gonna stand out with a stopwatch outside the ladies' room? If I,
Madam Mayor,
can we make it 7 minutes?
10 would be.
Okay.
I don't care which way or the other. I just want to know what time to come back to my seat. That's all.
Okay. 10 minutes.
Okay.
Let's take a recess for 10 minutes. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, microphones are open. We're going live in 3, 2, 1. That's 10 minutes. There we go. Yeah, I set my timer on that, so we're all good. 10 minutes on the button.
Yes.
All right, let's resume this meeting. Okay, moving on to our public hearings, ordinance number 2017-14. Second reading, amending chapter 23, land development regulations,
moved.
article 5. Got a motion? Actually, before we have a motion, I need to have the city attorney read it, and he's not yet at the dais.
Okay. Ordinance number 2017-14 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending Chapter 23, Land Development Regulations, Article 5, Supplemental Regulations, Section 23.5-4, Historic Preservation, to refine policies, rules, and regulations relating to historic preservation, private severability, to appeal laws of conflict, codification, and an effective date.
Now I'll entertain a motion. Hold on, a motion was made before, but it couldn't be recognized because the resolution has to be read by legal counsel. I'm sorry, the ordinance has to be read by legal counsel before a motion can be made. Did you still want to make that motion?
Sure.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Commissioner Hardy?
Okay, so the city manager is not here to discuss this with us, but basically it's my understanding that we got some sort of notice from the state that the amendments that we were going to pass or add or what have you to the existing ordinance did not comply with what the state requires of us.
Correct.
Perhaps Mr. Waters would like to speak to that and would like to identify both for us and for the public some of the things that are at stake if we go forward with this.
Actually, Mr. Waters, hold on one second. City manager, I know you had something that you wanted to say in regards to this ordinance. Did you want to do so before the city, before our sustainability director?
We had received a letter which was copied to y'all, and I think I have the hard copy up there as well, basically asking us from the state to table this item to allow us to have conversations with them about our certified government status with the division. And I think Mr. Waters is about to run off a litany of several of the things that would be affected if we maybe moved ahead with the ordinance as it's currently written. So
Thank you. Mr. Waters? Okay.
With the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, it put in place established policies, procedures, and professionalism when it comes to historic preservation. That act was amended in 2001 to better provide guidance under the Certified Local Government Program, which communities across the country can participate in if they have a recognized preservation ordinance, an established board representing certain areas of expertise appropriate for historic preservation, staff members have a survey, and other general requirements to organize a preservation program that meets the standards under that act. We've been a certified local government for about 17 years. Part of that agreement with the state does stipulate that any changes to our preservation ordinances are sent to the state for review. They have 30 days to comment before taking action on changing the ordinance. The ordinance, at the request of the Historic Resource Preservation Board, was sent to the state after their hearing back in June. We received comments, the initial ones, at the date of your last meeting, which was, I guess, August 1st. And subsequently, we received another more detailed list of items of concern, mostly in regard to how the ordinance affects new construction and non-contributing properties. If we were to lose our certified local government status, we are in jeopardy of losing 2 grants at the state that we just received, one for survey work phase 2, one for design guidelines. That amounts to about $80,000 the city would lose. Also, it would call into question whether we can even have a preservation program, because under state statute in Florida, local governments can only do what is stipulated and organized and provided authority under Florida statute. If we have an ordinance that does not meet the federal guidelines or the state guidelines, it would call into question whether we could actually have a preservation program or not. If we were to lose that, and also the authority to provide income tax credits, federal ad valorem tax credits for historic preservation, the exemptions under the Florida Building Code, the exemptions under the FEMA, which is a Flood Insurance Management Act, all would be placed in jeopardy. We'd also would rank very, very low if we were ever to apply for preservation, state grants, and aid. Those kinds of grants could be applied for, and they're in the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars for this building and also City Hall Annex and possibly the library. That's a real quick of what's at stake if we lose our status.
Vice Mayor?
Oh, well, I'd rather wait till the end if you don't mind. I have a few pointed comments that I'm going to share with everybody.
Commissioner Amoroso?
You know, I can go in a couple different directions too, but my main question is, why are we here if the letter hadn't come back in time? Because I know that we got the letters late the day that we were actually going to meeting. But I agree with tabling this until we have, you know, you rattled off a list. I have not seen that list. I would like to see the list, verify the list, you know. I think you spoke to a lot of different things that I need clarification on. I think we have a motion on the table to approve it, but, you know, I truly believe that it should be tabled, but, you know, we need to address these issues. You know, we got here because there was a large outcry from the community. So, you know, if we're going to look at this and deal with this, we need to, you know, talk to both boards, you know, talk to the people that are giving us recommendations and try to figure this out today, not tomorrow. But, you know, I have a lot of questions that, you know, need to be answered.
Okay, Commissioner Robinson?
I was just curious as to the input of legal when this was coming to us before, or even before it got to us, what the legal recommendation was.
Glenn?
The commission had provided direction to staff and had retained Nancy Stroud to develop the proposed ordinance, and she developed that ordinance and presented it, and you approved it on first reading. And the same day you were approving it on first reading, a letter was received from the state questioning whether that proposed ordinance met the guidelines and met the standards. Since then, I think there's been a second letter that was a little stronger, indicating that they'd like the opportunity to work with the city to develop standards that met the act. I have not yet researched whether our changes would jeopardize the act. Clearly, the agency that's administering the act is indicating that they believe it will jeopardize that.
Follow up, Commissioner Robinson?
Well, we have legal counsel, and I'm disappointed that we didn't get legal counsel on the ramifications.
Would you mind moving your microphone in front of you?
So.
Well, again, at the time, we had the letter at the same moment that the commission was approving.
Well, but the ordinance was written before that, and it should have been researched for the consequences of possibility of getting this letter from the state.
Understood.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes. One thing I guess should be stated, and I think Andy Amoroso I'm sorry, Commissioner Amoroso was approaching that basically the status quo isn't really acceptable, right? This ordinance was put on the table because we were getting lots of feedback from folks that they were really frustrated with the process, and they felt like it was very difficult for them to invest in their own homes. And we felt that we needed to give staff the appropriate flexibility to take into account other things than just historic preservation per se, right? And you know, it's not acceptable. So I'm very interested in seeing how this, you know, how we can work together with the state to amend the ordinance that we have here in a way that's actually impactful on that ground. And if we can't, then we're going to have a different discussion. And that's a discussion I prefer not to have because I see the value in historic preservation. At the same time, you know, we can't have you know, situations where it's very difficult for people to replace their roofs and windows and doors, even when they're living in houses that aren't really contributing. That's just completely unacceptable, particularly given the problems that we have here in Lake Worth and encouraging investment. That's number one. The other thing, and I spoke very briefly with the city manager about this, is that basically what I see this is, you know, I see this as a regulation problem, right? And I don't tend to think that regulation is always the boogeyman, but, you know, basically, you know, what we have here is a statute, right, that doesn't give flexibility to governments that are closest to people that know their problems best, right? And so when those of us who are hearing from people every single day that this is a problem go to change the ordinance, right, the statute, which the regulators, you know, at the state, and that's the way that I see them as regulators, they're interpreting the statute as saying, hey, cities, who know your constituents better than we do, you can't fix this problem for them. And I'm wondering if perhaps a better strategy that would solve not only our problems, but the problems of other cities that are dealing with this, is to go to the legislature and lobby them to make changes to the statutes to empower local governments to make decisions about what goes on in their city for their residents. I think that's a discussion that we seriously need to have. I understand that we have certain lobbying priorities, and I think that we need to consider this one of them, because there are too many people who are seeking relief from what is a very strict and what some people would interpret as a heavy-handed regime of regulation coming from us, and we're trying to change it and we're unable to. And I feel really bad not being able to deliver change for our residents.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I've been practicing my breathing techniques for the last 5 minutes. I voted against historic preservation in 2002 whenever we implemented the law, because for a couple of fundamental reasons. Number one, I think that in many cases folks were hoodwinked into getting us to that point of the adoption of that historical preservation. Number two, we didn't have any design guidelines. Number three, I foresaw some of the problems in 2002 that we've been talking about for 17 years or 15 years or however long it's been. You can do the math. That being said, here we are in 2017. I believe that we as elected officials have a responsibility to look out for the best interests of all of our residents. Okay? And part of what we do in some cases, we appoint people to boards to help us carry out that mission. Historic Preservation Board being one of those things that the boards that we appoint to help us with that mission. For many years, this community has cried out, much like they did for the electric rates, much like what they still do for code, but people have been crying for some type of relief from the arbitrary, subjective, sometimes behavior and opinions of staff and or the board. And as I've said 1,000 times before, and I'll say it 1,000 times into the future, the property that people own in this city is not my property as an elected official. It's not your property as a staff member or a board member. And it's not my money that they have to invest to carry out the subjective will in many cases, with respect to historic preservation. Historic guidelines are 15 years late. So now we've given direction to staff to help us find a way to balance this, to give relief to our property owners and our residents. And I get the distinct impression that either A, there was a lack of communication and or maybe a lack of understanding of just exactly what our direction was to staff, because I'd like to know why this information wasn't made available to us before we even had the first conversation about tinkering with the ordinance. And why it was, and I would like to know who authorized the correspondence to go to Tallahassee in the first place, because in my humble opinion, I think that this was an effort to thwart the will of this commission. Now, if it is in fact state law and we are in error in the approach that we're taking, that's great. We should have known that up front, and we could have taken a different approach or tried to work with it differently. But now I feel like we've got egg on our face because we tried to act on behalf of the community, and now we're being told that, we're in violation. The other thing is, we went out and hired outside counsel. And I would suggest, why didn't the outside counsel advise us up front of what's going on here? So I'm pretty upset about where we are right now, and I'm going to withdraw my motion. But the other thing I want to find out too is I want to go back to when the Historical Preservation Ordinance was adopted and its relationship and application with the state. And I want to find out if design guidelines should have been part of the entire act on day one. Because apparently it wasn't, or I don't know what's going on, but that should have been in place on day one. If it had been in place, we're not having this conversation tonight. We need to clean this mess up and clean it up yesterday. I'm very, very, very concerned about how this is rolled out. I'm very concerned about the behavior and the direction of the historical board. I'm very concerned about the staff's position in all this. I really feel, and it kind of speaks a little bit to the footnotes that were on the ordinance the last time we were here, that nobody on those two entities really wanted to tinker with the ordinance. It was like, yeah, we'll let those elected officials, because you all know better. Well, I'm a little embarrassed that we have to get a letter from the state now, and that should have been, vetted out long before we ever opened our mouths and said, let's go in this direction. And that's all I have to say.
I have a question for you, Willem. Does the state know that I'm a contributing house in College Park, built in the 1920s, and the city manager is a non-contributing house built in the 1920s, same year as mine, and he's not a contributing factor? The lack of consistency. His home is not historic. He's not on the historic register. My home is historic. I'm on the historic register. We're both in the same neighborhood. Our house was built in the same year, and we're not there. The arbitrary components of what streets and what areas and whatever, I'm just saying, if we're not in, how could our original rules and guidelines be deemed by the state to be legal, and what we're presenting is not legal, when parts of our city that are in the same neighborhoods, built in the same years, are not contributing I'm just saying, it all seems a bit arbitrary, as the vice mayor said. I'm fine with going back to attorneys and saying, if there's something we have to look at, I always am going to err on the side of caution. I'm always going to do what's legal, and I'm always going to do what's consistent. But there is consistency lacking in all of this. I'm not going to point fingers or anything like that, but I'm just saying, what makes it, so the grand poobah rules is we must do this at this time here, but not if you're on that side of the block, and not if it's dusk, and not if the sun sets in a certain neighborhood, and not if that person has a blue roof, and not if that person has an orange garbage can. It's so out there, and that's the stuff that we're hearing from the neighborhood and the community, which is why we brought this to, is why we brought this to a head as a purpose, not to go against historic rules, not to stop the historic process. And my one big question is, for significant properties like the Gulfstream Hotel, does their letter that we're just seeing here up on the dais tonight, does this letter put that in jeopardy of them getting any historic assistance?
You want me to answer all those questions?
The Gulfstream Hotel, how about that one?
If we don't have an ordinance that meets the FET and just Commissioner Hardy, the CLG program is administered under the National Historic Preservation Act, so it's a federal law, not a state law. The state statutes do govern how we can articulate and implement regulatory measures in Florida, which includes historic preservation. So they kind of two work together.
May I ask? So, are you saying that? This letter is coming from the Florida Department of State, right? Mm-hmm. And so, are you saying that regulators at the state level, and I'm going to call them regulators, I don't, regulators at the state level have basically adopted national guidelines and applying them to localities?
The State Historic Preservation Office and officer is an adjunct administrator from the National Park Service. It is a state agency within the Department of State, but they actually follow all the rules established under the National Historic Preservation Act, which is also administered by the National Park Service, the National Register, Secretary of Interior standards for designation, how designations are done for historic districts and historic sites. It all is established as a professional field that's been in existence now almost 50 years. And so it's all expected to sort of work together, and you have a commonality among ordinances from city to city. I can't explain for the mayor why certain areas were designated versus not. I do know that in College Park, looking back at it, the eastern part of the city eastern part of College Park had so many newer buildings that if it were included as an overall district, College Park, the district would not have qualified to be designated because at least 50% or 51% of the buildings need to be 50 years old or older or considered contributing. And if you had done a district that included all of College Park, you would not have met that threshold. So there was a decision made by the powers that be at that time that they would designate only half of College Park, the area west of Federal Highway.
That's 20 years ago. Right?
And that was 20, I was just going to say.
It's about 20 years ago.
So that would not apply today. Today it would all be historic if you were redistricting.
If you were probably coming forward, there would be a very strong argument that could be made that all of College Park should be an historic district.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, just a couple of things I forgot to say, and I mean this very, very sincerely. I would like to have a presentation with explanations to some of the points I brought up. I want to know who generated the letter, under whose authority, what was going on, and why we were not informed that there was a conflict. I want to know why we were not informed there was a conflict. I want to know why I sat with an outside attorney and had this conversation. I want to know these, I want to have these questions answered for me, because I can't believe that we got ourselves in this little bit of a jam here.
Can I speak to this
City
a little
manager,
bit?
go ahead.
I don't believe that, from what I've read in this letter, and again, the Historic Preservation Board met prior to the ordinance coming to you, and they made comments, and that was sent to the Historic Division. Why they waited until the day of the meeting to send it, I don't know. But we're running along thinking everything is basically okay by the time the ordinance comes to you. So their lack of timely response, or however, is another set of issues. I don't believe some of the things that are mentioned here as being sticking points for them or concerns are insurmountable or gut the ordinance in the present form. So it's not a baby out with the bathwater kind of thing here. And
So all you're asking for is to reconsider so we can.
we
look
would
at
like
something
the opportunity now, which happens in these processes when you're dealing with agencies. This is not unique to anything we do. We go back and forth with other governmental entities, find out what we can maybe negotiate as an acceptable set of languages that addresses their concerns, and bring it back to you mainly intact. I'm not the expert here, obviously, but it's my understanding.
I
of reading it.
reviewed their comments.
It's not that
'cause
complicated.
I was in conversation with the state preservation officer. There's a couple of sticking points. I believe that we can get a vast majority of what you all want, which is a differentiation in the level of review between or among contributing properties, non-contributing properties, and new construction, and also given the authority in a very objective way, not being subjective or arbitrary, more latitude to staff to make an array of decisions. The State Historic Preservation Officer did agree that we needed to keep in mind climate change, hurricane protection,
Right.
other things. It's just a method by which we had gone about doing it, or Nancy had proposed at your direction, was not meeting what they felt was appropriate in how we regulate historic districts.
And to that end, we believe that the resulting product will still give you a significant improvement in the process that the citizens who are complaining about doors, windows, what they can do in their backyard, those kinds of things will be addressed. But we need the opportunity now, getting this from them, to do that and not waste a lot of time bringing it back to you, because there are people still pulling permits under the present system.
I would agree with staff on this, but I would make it as quick as possible because people are indeed waiting with permits at this time. We're going to go to public comment in just a second. I'd like to give Commissioner Amoroso a chance to talk. He hasn't spoken on this item.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah, so if we can go to public comment and then one more shot.
Okay.
Thank you.
William Feldkamp first, followed by Bob Olenek.
Good evening, folks. My name is William Feldkamp, 108 Lake Avenue, Loft 205. I would strongly urge you folks to table this, to continue it. I am speaking as a private citizen, but I am a member of the Historic Preservation Board. I was previously a member of West Palm Beach Preservation Board. I chaired the Preservation Board on the island of Palm Beach and the Architectural Commission. You folks are in a tough position. I know you're getting lots and lots of feedback from folks, but I would hope that you would continue it for 3 reasons. First off is the grant money for the illustrated set of design guidelines, which is absolutely 17 years overdue. We finally have the grant money for that, and hopefully that will happen soon. Commissioner Maxwell, you're absolutely right. That should have been done ages ago. I fear, as William Waters does, I fear very much the loss of our designation as a certified local government. That program, if it is eliminated, puts the Gulfstream Hotel at risk. Any developer of that Gulfstream Hotel would possibly not be eligible for a tax abatement program, and that's a major issue on a major building. And third, I fear just unintended consequences that we don't know about yet. I'm with you. I know you folks are right that we need changes in this ordinance. I would just like for us to go slow. As Mayor says, going too fast raises the red flag. We don't want that. So please continue this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Olenek. Followed by Peggy Fisher.
Thank you, Bob.
That was
Thank you
really
very much,
quick.
Bob.
That was very quick.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Brevity, I love it.
See, now they're wasting more of my time.
No, it
I didn't
doesn't
start
to you.
it. I didn't start it yet.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. I sent a letter to each of you. I hope you had a chance to read it. Really, I'm the new guy on the block on the HRPB, and I too think that there are changes that need to happen. I mean, design guidelines, Vice Mayor, absolutely. That was one of the first questions I asked at my first meeting. Is that I don't know what I'm supposed to look at. And I also think the subjectivity of the contributing versus not contributing is again, it baffles me. I don't understand how we're making these determinations. If it can be more structured in either design guidelines or something of that nature, I think that's the way to go. Because I don't, as William said, I don't think we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, nor do we know maybe what all the unintended consequences are by moving too quickly on the ordinance as it is. So I would support tabling of this and getting back. I think I would love if you're going to workshop it, invite us along, and we can sit and workshop it together, our board and the commission. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Fisher.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. My concern is the city went out and hired a consultant who I don't believe is here tonight, which obviously didn't serve this city very well. And that's money we've spent at a cost to the taxpayers. And now we're having to do more. And I, as a taxpayer who lives west of the railroad tracks, as they said when I was growing up in West Palm Beach, am appalled. I'm appalled at staff. I'm appalled that a letter came in the day you had this meeting and it should have been stopped that day. And I'm appalled that the consultant you hired isn't in this room listening to all this. And now we're talking about having further conversations, and I'm appalled if there is a further bill.
Thank you. Are there any more public comment cards? No? Okay. Anyone want a second stab at it? Vice Mayor?
Still breathing. I want to go back for just a second and make it very clear, especially to the two board members that are here. I appreciate your service. I appreciate the service of everybody in your board and the service of all the board appointees for all the boards. We couldn't get through a day if we didn't have the support of folks like yourselves as far as moving the city in a positive direction. But I also believe that our board appointees, individually and collectively, should be a representation of what we, as your elected officials, are looking at for the city. Okay? Within some degree of, and I'm not saying this is the case, but I mean, I don't think that we would imagine a scenario where we would appoint board members who are going to go rogue because they got appointed to a board and now they're going to go off on a tangent, because I don't think that should be the case or is appropriate. And I certainly appreciate the passion that you, particularly on this type of a board, would have for historical preservation. And that goes the same for staff. Okay. But we have issues here that we've been dealing with for a long, long time. Again, going back to the design guidelines. We're talking about, well, we're going to lose $80,000 for grant money. Well, you know what? Where the heck was the staff back in the height of the housing boom when we had more money coming into this city than you can shake a stick at? Not only was the subject never broached, but we would have had plenty of money. We wouldn't have to have a grant to have taken care of the problem 10 years ago. Okay? Well, you've been here for a number of years. Again,
6.5.
What the heck is going on here? In fact, I was here probably 8 months ago and stood up and said, what's going on with the design guidelines? I don't know if that was the impetus for us to move in that direction or not. All I'm saying is, if I know about it, other people know about it, and why do we continue that ship to sail when we really don't have a clear, objective set of that everybody can read from the same sheet of music? The other thing is, going back to, I know Commissioner Robinson is very passionate about this. Everybody keeps saying the value of historic preservation, how it improves property values. Well, I would dare say that if you go back and look at the property values of 2001 and 2002 in these historic districts and look at the value of them today and discount the value of how properties in general have appreciated, I don't know that there's much of a difference. These properties are appreciating because they're on the water in South Florida. Okay? All I'm trying to say is we're all excited about historic preservation, but we can't get the realtors to tell people that they're in a historic district for fear that the red flag is going to go up and the folks won't buy the property. We finally got around 8 months ago or 6 months ago to putting up these little signs that says historic district. There's a lot of moving parts here that never really got on the same sheet of music over these past 17 years. And I dare say there's been a lot of property owners who have sold and left because they couldn't deal with it. And that doesn't even begin with some of the folks who've been here the entire 17 years or 20 years. Some folks are getting up there in age, older, and now they've got to get a roof. And now they're going to experience, in their senior years, a huge expense and all this process that is really, in some cases, subjective, and they can't afford it. And when I hear comments like, well, it's only $7,000 more for the roof. Come on. Who are we to spend their money like that? Okay? I would say that I would implore, once we get through this mess, for my own edification, I don't know if anybody else here is curious about this, but if you want to do a study up beyond the design guidelines and find out what's going on with historic preservation, I think there needs to be a real valid study of the economic impact of historic preservation in this city. Now, I'm kind of biased because I'm from the Northeast. Historic preservation, in my mind, are the buildings that I used to touch leaving the elementary school in Newport, Rhode Island. Those are historic buildings. I have an uncle and an aunt who live in a home that was built 5 years before the Revolutionary War in a battlefield. That is historic. We can't go crazy because something's 50 years old in South Florida. We can't even build a school that lasts more than 20 or 25 years. We have got to put things in the proper context. And let's be honest with ourselves and realistic with ourselves and quit trying to make ourselves sometimes something we may not actually be or ready to be. And that's all I've ever asked over these 17 years. And it pains me to have a conversation 3 or 4 times a week with somebody who's got an issue. They can't get their permit. They're being battled tooth and nail with the Historic Preservation Board. That is not the level of service that we should be delivering for our residents and our property owners. That is not a level of service that's going to garner the confidence that we need people to have to invest in this community. And I'm not going to lecture anymore, but please, I'm just saying, let's get this cleaned up, moving forward, and let's get historic preservation on the right track. Thank you.
Commissioner Amoroso?
A couple things before we finish this out. Commissioner Vice Mayor Maxwell had mentioned the big historic brown signs that popped up all over my district. I don't remember ever voting on those, but I do remember working with the CRA on a master sign plan so we could stop some of the sign pollution, and then all of a sudden these big brown signs popped up. The mayor had mentioned about district, and I think one of the biggest problems I've had since day one is, again, I represent one of the more affluent districts that houses are selling quickly, and they're coming in, they're putting a lot of money into it only to be hit with a wall of historic. I don't know that it's fair to have, half of College Park. I get it. I understand why, but they wouldn't have been able to be historic if they included the entire district. So they left half the district out in order to make it historic. And then they also left another piece out, which is Eden Place. And at the time, the commissioner that left that out actually pushed this program. So, it's quite interesting how it happens. And not that I want to make the whole city historic, but why isn't the west side, where some of the older houses, not historic? It's just quite confusing to me on that. I'm concerned about who's taking the lead on this. I want to make sure that we get the proper information back. I agree with Commissioner Hardy on the home rule. What he was mentioning is what we call home rule. Palm Beach County League of Cities, Florida League of Cities, and the National League of Cities have all taken up prime space on home rule. That's the main objective. And I think, Mr. City Manager, when we're going to Tallahassee, when we're directing our lobbyists, home rule should be on the top. Because we can't make decisions for you as a taxpayer that works best for the city of Lake Worth, and medical marijuana dispensaries pop up as something that was taken away from the city of Lake Worth, which should be a home rule issue because Tallahassee made that decision for us. And then lastly, William, you had mentioned, and I'll use your word, latitude of staff. I think that concerns me the most because I think hearing from some of the residents, that was one of the issues we had. That staff had latitude, contributing, not contributing. I sat in on historic and other meetings where, staff's recommendation was A, and the board said, no, we're going with B, because some of the latitude was not acceptable. So, I'm concerned with that.
Mr. Robinson?
I mentioned the legal side of it. We have two lawyers that were involved in this, I hope. One of them being the consultant. The other thing is, I'm looking forward to Commissioner Maxwell's withdrawal. The other thing is compatible material. Compatible material is a subjective topic, and I don't think I certainly hope we don't spend a whole lot of time trying to define it, because it's compatible in somebody's mind. There's new materials, and that's one of the problems we had in citizen concerns, was being refused new material that didn't affect the character, the historic character of the neighborhood, which is the sole purpose of the historic district, not a doorknob or window. You can say mullion. But I was around when we had discussion of a quarter of an inch in the difference of the frame of a window. It's bizarre. It's restrictive. It discourages investment in Lake Worth. It's a wonderful thing. We just need to keep working at it. The lines were drawn to get the districts. It's as simple as why zoning is on one side of the street and different zoning on the other side of the street. So I don't think we want to get into changing any of those lines. I would like to, but then we're really talking.
We've gone beyond the half hour by almost 1 minute at this time, so we can either go to workshop or we can make a decision on it. I know I know the vice mayor withdrew his motion. So who had the second on that?
I did.
Are you withdrawing your second?
I want to make sure that compatible material doesn't come back again without being understood that the evolution of materials has to be included in historic preservation approvals.
And I agree. William, something to keep in mind too. In 2002, and I say this only because I went through 13 different processes for my home, which is historic and which is a contributing historic home built in the 20s. In 2002, I'm sure they were not so happy that I wanted to replace windows in my home with metal windows, because they wanted me, I know at the time the talk was to make sure, could you bring in all brand new wood windows with wood sashes and whatever. And many of those windows were already changed out to metal jalousie windows in the 1950s or whatever from some of the old square windows on my home. But they made a decision to allow a metal window at that time, and this was non-impact. This was before we went through all the hurricanes, so it was before impact windows became a necessity. And they made sure that I had the 4 lights over 1 and whatever. It went to comparison. I'm sure it was difficult at the time having historic preservation in mind, but that was a new material that was being used. It was going to withstand, it wasn't going to rot, termite damage, X, Y, and Z, and they accepted that as long as it was for it. And that was where I think that we were going when we look at new products that are introduced today, like vinyl and fencing that looks at least sustained in colors that are traditional or historic if you're a contributing structure, or not if you're not. You know, I think it's more, you made an evolution back then to allow new products that were there. We just haven't made that update today. And I think that's where this whole thing comes from. It's not saying it's got to be all or nothing. It's saying that these are products, you made that choice before to allow those things, and I don't understand why we're not moving with the times at least as we try to do as much as we can to stay within the historic venture and have assistance when we can, or get financial assistance if we must do X, Y, and Z. Get funding from that we can get it to make those decisions. But we are, just as Commissioner Hardy said, and the Vice Mayor, and I think all of us up here, you know, we're looking for investment in this community. And there's not a time in the last 6 years that I've been sitting here that I've ever seen a presentation on how historic preservation has increased the property values in this community. Not once. But that's what we're being held to by this letter. That this is one of the reasons that it increases property values. I'm not to say that maybe sometimes it doesn't. I'm not to say that I'm not willing to lose the benefits of being an historic district. I'm not interested in losing the ability for some of our historic properties like City Hall and like the Gulfstream Hotel, or like whatever, in jeopardy of them being able to lose monies that will help them continue to carry on that tradition. I'm not willing to risk that myself. I happen to be a fan of preservation in many ways, but again, within reason. And that's where the arbitrary process has become so difficult for residents, because one resident on this street gets approved for that, and the next time somebody comes with the same thing on this street, they don't get approved for that, and they're all, confusion is, and that's what they're talking, and that's when we get bombarded. So I think that based on this letter, and I know that you rescinded your motion in second, but based on this letter, obviously, guys, we can talk to her blue in the face. We've already gone past the time.
Move the table.
Thank you.
Move to table.
Second.
Second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Ordinance number 2017-19. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2017-19 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 1, in general, Section 2-12, appointment of members of city boards in terms of office, to clarify the process and allow for 60 days for appointment of new members or alternates, to allow participation by telephone conference in extraordinary circumstances, creating a sunset provision, providing severability, the repeal of laws in conflict, codification, and an effective date.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to speak out against this ordinance for one quick thing, and just to say that I don't like the 60 days. The whole purpose of doing this and not parading candidates before the city commission like we used to do in the old days was to make sure that our boards stayed filled at a consistent basis, because they were empty. And oftentimes in this very ordinance that you have a sunset regulation in here for boards that don't meet amount of times, and then you have a 60-day proposal for people to be appointed to boards. You're going to end up 60 days is going to be longer. If someone doesn't appoint in 60 days and all of a sudden they don't have a quorum for are they going to be in 2 months? Are they going to be in jeopardy of having their board sunsetted because the commissioner decided not to appoint someone in 60 days? I think it conflicts itself, it contradicts itself, and I'm not going to vote for it. Commissioner Amoroso?
I need clarity, because I thought the 60 days was put in for new electeds. Because that's the way I understood it originally, was because you had somebody that was elected, it would take them 30 days to get initiated, and maybe up to another 30 days to, you know, get to know the candidates, whatever it may be.
City Attorney?
I thought that was more of what we were looking for.
We could tweak it to make that clearer, or you just obviously, you have up to 60 days. That doesn't mean you can't appoint in 3 days. It's really up to the individual commissioner how quick, but if you want to change it from 60 to 45 or 30, that's up to the commission.
Okay. Commissioner Robinson?
Well, in the haste of getting people appointed, now we're going to change the process. I would think that if there's a real concern for a vacancy, the chairman of the board and all the other board members should contact that one specific Commissioner to appoint.
I have just one question, and then please, it's all yours. I was told by a resident that the P and Z board still has an opening. Is there anyone here from planning and zoning? Did you have an opening on your board?
No.
Not at this current time. Okay. Because are there any boards that we know that have openings that have not been filled in any amount of time, Commissioner Robinson?
Recreation.
Recreation, no one.
Recreation.
Who's up for appointing on that board? Did we know?
There is.
I've not been notified that I have any appointing on that board.
There has been conversation, our last meeting, about re-energizing a new board. So we're hoping for new applicants.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yes, so perhaps I'm wrong, but I think I brought up the idea of this ordinance shortly after being elected in March. You know, the idea was, look, it's tough, right? Like, you're a new elected official, right? You don't know the bathroom from the closet, from the this or the that, and you know, within 30 days you're trying to find your way around City Hall, meet with everyone that you need to meet with, and oh, by the way, you have to solicit not just not just appointees for this board, but you have to solicit applications, right? So it's not like you can say, hey, you know, I know this person's very good. You have to get them to fill out an application on paper, get them to submit it to Sylvina, and then appoint them. And by the way, you have to do all that within 30 days. The idea was that for a new elected official, they should have 60 to figure out City Hall and then make appointments, you know, where they have the ability to. In particular, there was one instance in which I had a seat open, you know, my district had a seat, the previous commissioner hadn't filled it, and now I'm responsible for the days in which he didn't fill it. That wasn't necessarily right. So I don't, you know, the way that I saw this was that it applied to new elected officials. The way that I read your comment just now, Mr. Tresivia, Mr. City Attorney, was that basically that's true, but that maybe it wasn't necessarily clear, and that you could write the ordinance to make it a little clearer. I don't see why we can't, as long as it's abundantly clear. If you believe it's clear, you know, I don't see why we can't approve such an ordinance at this time. I would like to bring up another issue, though, and this is kind of interesting. So there are certain boards that meet quarterly, right? For example, the Library Advisory Board, but there's a certain number of days, right, where, like, if you miss a meeting within a certain number of days, right, you're automatically off the board, right? So, for example, like, if you're a member of the Library Advisory Board, you miss one meeting, you're off the board, right? And so this ordinance was not written to address that. I just wanted to bring that up so that perhaps we can have another ordinance in the future to address issues like that. Quarterly boards, you should be able to miss one meeting. God forbid your son get married, or, you know, this or that. You should be able to do that.
I like to just tag on to Commissioner Hardy on that. It also refers to the CRA board too. There are ones that they have the 20% rule or whatever it is. City Attorney, do you have an answer for
Yeah,
that?
if the commission's goal is 30 days for everyone, newly elected officials 60 days, I can read you some language right now that'll fix that. If you want to take a look and page.
I just think that we're creating things,
Right.
we're creating steps. I mean, the issue that really needs to be changed is the one that Commissioner Hardy just brought up. That's something that's been
So we can
it's
change
come
that
up
right now.
so
If
many
that's what-
times.
If that's what
adding
you
that.
want, 30 days, and newly elected officials have 60 days. That's an easy change. If that's your amended motion, we can make that happen right now.
I would also add the attendance policy. I mean, this would be a good time to add the attendance policy, or do you want to come back and bring another whole ordinance? Or can we add that to it?
Can we keep this bite size?
Yeah.
We'll come back.
So let's correct this piece, and we'll come back and take another bite at another piece. It's been difficult to get some of these ordinances addressed. I think
Imagine
we're
that.
talking about the first set of appointments as a newly elected official is 60 days, and then after those first ones, it goes into the 30 days.
And just to clarify, City Manager, it was because the newly electeds, their former
Yeah.
counterparts, their time clocks were running. So that's where they needed the extra time. It was not to add the time.
Sure.
We have a public comment card too. Commissioner Amoroso, would you like to talk first, and then I'll bring it up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make, because you had asked what other boards. For instance, the Finance Advisory Board, I have an appointment, and it can take up to 30 days because we got a resignation prior to, and then we had to reach out to applicant, and then we had to schedule an appointment. I have yet to interview that person. And, so it can take up to 30 days, they have jobs, we have jobs, and, there is a process.
Well, I remember just a few months back, it was told that we as commissioners need to step up to the plate and make sure that we appoint someone quickly.
But again,
the
it can
process
take
is
up to
difficult.
30 days.
I know. Richard Garcia?
I almost said, no, kind of covered a lot. Richard Garcia, Chair of the Finance Advisory Board. And Commissioner Amoroso is correct. We had a resignation last Monday, right before our board meeting. I spoke with Commissioner Amoroso the next day and went over with the applicants that were already in. And to clarify something, the FAB itself is the core of the Bond Oversight Committee. So I was giving him applicants from the Bond Oversight Committee that we could pull from there and then resubmit them on that. So it's not certain if you're on the FAB, you're already serving on those two boards, one on the board and one on the committee as well, right? So,
No.
Yeah, you are.
No going back and forth. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's okay. I recall it being 45 days for a new commissioner coming in. That's what I recall being the day that we talked about it in March, and that the time frame is, if the clock is running, swearing in is 2 weeks after the election, right? So that means that 2 weeks before the election, then someone would have had to resign. There would have had to have been a board opening for that incumbent or the incumbent that was there. Now, if the incumbent was running for election and he won, his clock is still running, Mr. City Attorney. His clock is still running, right? If he gets displaced, then the new commissioner comes in and he starts a new clock. Now, if it started out, Commissioner Hardy's shaking his head, I don't understand why.
You're not, we don't have discourse back and forth.
I understand that.
Thank you.
We'll give the instance. If Commissioner McVoy had an appointment prior to the election, there was a resignation, and he won the election, his clock doesn't begin again and continued on from where it was. That's how I recall it being, right? So then if Commissioner Hardy, who actually won the election at that time, upon his swearing in, then his clock would start. And I remember that being 45 days, not 60, although I still feel that 30 days, put your nose down and get an appointment and get a nomination, talk to the chair of the board, and then you get the applicants from there as well. You can pull from there. But 45 days is how I remember it being.
Commissioner Hardy?
Yeah, it's totally possible that I was mistaken about the nature of when my clock starts after being elected or any new elected official. That's totally possible. I still think, and it's really, really important to consider the way that Andy said, we all up here, most of us have like jobs, right? Like I'm a teacher. I can't, most people, if you work a 9 to 5, you work in an office and you say, hey boss, I need to be out for an hour. I'll come back after 5 and I'll get my work done. That can't happen for me, right? So I have an extremely limited window in which to meet with people and to deal with people, and that's between 2:45 and 5 p.m. typically. It is very difficult when you're trying to meet with staff, right? I mean, we got an electric staff, we got, Brian back there, we got water, we got, public service. All of that we're trying to get our heads around. We're trying to learn the meeting. We're trying to get ready, get prepared, and get up to speed. And oh, by the way, we must now solicit individuals to apply for these boards. And I understand in cases we may want to rely or lean on the chairman of a board, but that might not always be true. In addition to that, I'm not sure that I want to yield my ability to pick these individuals to the chairman of the particular board. I want the time and the space and the comfort to do my due diligence. And I think every elected official should be afforded that, particularly when they're new to the job. I see no need to rush. I understand it might impair in some ways the functionality of the board. I understand that. At the same time, elections are, at least now, relatively infrequent. I think after this year, we will have years, at least a year without an election from time to time. And, yeah, right. 3-year terms. So I just think it's important that we give newly elected officials the time to get acclimated to the office and to search for applicants on their terms.
Okay.
I think 60 is fine, and I would like to hear the language that Glenn put together.
Glenn?
Okay, so if you're looking on page 2, starting at line 67, where it says an elected official in your packet, an elected official responsible for an appointment of a board member or an alternate to a city board shall have 30 days to make the appointment. However, a newly elected official shall have 60 days to make the appointment. Pretty simple to me. So if that's what you want, then that's it. 30 days.
For how long? How long are they considered newly elected?
Oh, when you're elected from the date of swearing in. A new elected official from the date of swearing in.
First appointments.
So the first appointments that they make, that doesn't go on that they'll always have
No,
60
no,
days
no,
or-
no. Only for their initial 60 days. So if you're sworn in on March 21st, you'll have until May 21st.
So
And
their
after-
clock gets restarted now at 60 days from their next appointments, and then they'll be no longer be.
Then it'll be 30 days
Then
after
they'll
that.
be 30 days after.
Correct.
Commissioner Amoroso?
Just for clarity, City Attorney, and I think Mr. Gercio, unless I'm mistaken, was a little confused on something. So the FAB Board has 7 members. The Bond Oversight Committee has 7 members.
Correct.
You cannot appoint a bond to the FAB because you need 7 and 7, because when they meet together, it's 14. Am I correct? Okay.
Unless you wanted to take someone from the one board, put them on the other, and you create a vacancy there. You're going to have a vacancy somewhere.
Well, you have a vacancy, but I'm not looking to create a vacancy. I'm
Exactly.
looking to,
Fill the spot.
appoint.
Madam Mayor,
No, no. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted
Yes.
clarity. Yeah,
Correct.
I don't want to create a vacancy.
Vice Mayor?
I am looking to extend this conversation as long as possible. Let's to the city.
I'd like everyone in the audience to come on up.
Exactly. This may be a little technical, but just for future, for any future commissions or whatever, I think going back to the newly elected, we need to differentiate a new person that's newly elected versus an
Re-elected.
incumbent who's been reelected. However you have to clean up the language.
So why don't we just bring it, if I could, let me just bring it back at the next meeting with all these changes so you can see it. And that's what it's going to be, 30 days.
And if you're going to bring it back, I'd like you to bring it back with the ordinance that will help, like the CRA, the attendance ordinance piece that addresses the CRA.
CRA and the
Can we do separate ordinances,
No.
please?
Is it necessary? Can we do them both next week?
Every time we've addressed operations of the commission, it's been multiple meetings and hours-long discussions. I'd rather
You know what, though? We
separate.
only meet once a week, and you guys take like years in government to
I know.
get anything done. So, the fact that we're here for a couple of hours extra is no biggie off my back.
Okay, I'll do a omnibus
Thank
ordinance.
you. We've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor?
Wait.
Change.
We've got a yes, we have to withdraw the motion because he's coming back with it, so.
There is a withdrawal,
motion-
there was a motion withdrawn, and the second was withdrawn. We need to make another motion.
A motion to have this come back for second reading at your next meeting. That way that you don't have to re-advertise it again.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Oh, motion carries unanimously. Let's move on to item 10C, ordinance number 2017-21. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number is 2017-21 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, repealing Article 15 of Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances in order to
Right in the chambers, please.
sunset the City of Lake Worth Sister City Board and providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, I would like to thank the Sister City Board and all of its members, especially former Commissioner Aretha Lowe,
Yes.
for her commitment and her attendance and her passion for helping and trying each and every time. And to all the members of the Sister City Board, it did not go unnoticed for the ones who came and showed up and were part of it. I only wish that we could maybe reconvene with some a more direct mission and help all the diverse of our community in many different ways, including all of our sister cities. So thank you very much. We've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor, I'm sorry, Commissioner Robinson?
With the understanding that our city is going to certainly keep in contact with our sister cities.
Correct.
And we can call them sister cities without having a board.
Yes, we can. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Sadly, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to 10D, public hearing regarding the extension of the city's water system with the purchase of Lake Osborne Water Works. Hello, sir. Come on up and join us. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Second.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioner. Brian Shields.
I don't think there, excuse me, I don't believe there's a motion to be made for
Yeah,
this.
this
It's a
is
public hearing.
this is simply a time if there were any objections received for you to listen to objections. There was one written objection that I'm aware of. You'll have this item back at your first meeting in September to both approve the purchase and also to extend the system. but there's a process where people have an opportunity to file their objections. Someone did, and if they're here and like to speak, they could, and I think Brian was here to answer any questions.
I have a card from Marilyn Davis. Would you like to come up, please? Does she come up? No.
No.
You do. It's just. Oh, you do? Do you need to address the crowd publicly?
Crowd.
The audience? Crowd. Can someone help her, please?
He's coming.
You know, I was gonna say, typically you drop the mic after you speak.
Yeah.
But she dropped the whole arm and the.
No, it hasn't, not yet.
No, we're holding here. Time.
You can tell me you tore the place up.
Well, we saw you do it.
Our water system works better.
Mr. Pass, can you check the temperature in here and see if someone touched that thing?
I've never been to one of your commission meetings. My name is Marilyn Davis. I live at 5662 Lake Geneva Drive in Lake Worth, 33461.
Welcome.
And I do not live in the city of Lake Worth. And I'm kind of glad I don't after I'm seeing all this frustration that's on your guys' agendas. I'm just kidding. But I do live in Lake Osborne Estates, and we are being affected by this change in the water system. We were notified by a hand-delivered letter, and we're given 5 days' notice to oppose this takeover. But as I talked to the city manager and to this gentleman outside in the hallway during the break, I found out that you've already agreed to this resolution. And I watched as you were, had a lot of frustration with communication, things that, you guys didn't understand. And Lake Osborne Estates doesn't understand why we weren't ever notified, why we didn't know there was any litigation going on between the water companies. I mean, you have a utility at your home, electric, water, whatever. And if it was being changed, wouldn't you want to know that? There's 560 residents in Lake Osborne Estates. That's an unincorporated Palm Beach County. We do not live in the city of Lake Worth. But we have never, ever gotten any notification when there's a change that's going to be made that affects Lake Osborne Estates. I can go back and talk about the baseball stadium, but thank God that didn't happen. Why wasn't Lake Osborne Estates ever notified? We have a civic association. We have a board of directors. And I saw how frustrated you were with several different items that have been brought up tonight. How frustrated do you think the residents are of Lake Osborne Estates that weren't given even, we were given 5 days to oppose this item that you've already decided on?
Thank you.
We don't know if there's another water company out there. And I know my time is up, but, I saw how frustrated you are. How come you never talked to Lake Osborne Estates?
Thank you. I'd like to ask city attorney, please, if you could, I don't know what I can say or can't. Is it all, the legal side of it all closed?
Yeah, if I could, just a little bit of background. Another company owns that system, so we can't interfere with their customers until.
I was going to say they should have communicated with you because they were your company of service. It wasn't ours.
And we have provided the water for years and years through that company, and so this was simply an agreement where the city is acquiring that. And Brian has more details if you want more details on it. I know you've spoken with him already, but the water's going to actually improve because the city is prepared to make an investment in, repairing replacing pipes and things like that.
You should have been notified. You should have been notified by the company who services you.
Right.
We provided the water to the company that services you, but they were your vendor. They were the person who did it. They came to us.
Litigation, it hasn't been settled yet, so maybe they didn't notify us because it hasn't been settled yet.
Madam
Well,
Mayor.
you're going to go back and forth, and I don't want to do that right in the city commission, but I'd be more than happy to speak with you afterwards about it. Commissioner Hardy?
Yes. This to me is very interesting. Mr. City Attorney, you obviously had it right. We can't interfere with another company's customers. And so obviously the same strictures that applied to the company that had this issue under litigation and mediation and all of that apply also to us, right? We're not going to go outside of those close negotiations and start talking to folks about issues that we're having legal discussions with. But I think the larger issue is, and I'm thinking a little bit as a civics teacher, if you have a civics association and this is an issue that's important to your residents, why haven't you come to us, right? Why is it that we have to be proactive about a system that isn't within our city, as you put it, right? This is not within our city, right? Unfortunately, you guys are not members of our constituency. And so, my question is, why isn't it, if this is so important, this is the first time I've heard of a civic associate, actually the second, but the first time I heard about it, we were already in this and I couldn't say anything. I haven't heard much about this civic organization, and I wish that we had heard from you earlier so that we could have thought about some things in different ways. But at the end of the day, we have to think about our constituency, which consists of people who live in the city. And it's unfortunate that we weren't able to have discussions.
Thank you. So we need any?
I think that's it. You just really need to accept it unless you have anything else from Brian, because it will be back on your agenda at the first meeting in September for 2 items. One would be accepting the settlement agreement, and the second would be extending your service area to include Lake Osborne Estates. But again, the city did take that extraordinary step of, I think you probably door hangers on every door there, which.
Yeah, let me address that issue.
So if somebody sells a company, Brian, right, or Glenn, if somebody sells a company to somebody else, and you provide services to someone, that the buyer isn't the one who has the relationship
Exactly.
with the client. It's we came in and stepped in actually in a situation. We stepped in legally one time before when I first became mayor, and came in and gave much needed or much wanted at the time reprieve financially on certain situations that we came in and voted for. What was the situation then? I forget what it was. But we came in and said, okay, and we came in and lowered the rates. What they charge was not what we charge. What they charge you is an entirely different animal. And and our rates are better than their rates, just between you and I.
They're going up, according to the letter I got back.
Yeah, let me address a couple of issues. Number one, last Tuesday, this commission approved a resolution to move to this step. So immediately, the next morning, we actually literally did door hangers. So that's as quickly as humanly possible to notify the residents of Lake Osborne Estates that this procedure was happening. They do get their opportunity. There are 2 meetings regarding this issue, tonight being one and September 19th, as Mr. Torcivia has said. So they do get the opportunity to object. They did object in writing. We did receive 1 letter of written objection from the Civic Association signed by Ms. Davis. We received a number of questions from Mr. Serrano, who's also on the Civic Association, and those were addressed. I did actually send an email to him addressing the exact same identical issues that were raised in Ms. Davis's letter regarding rates, regarding capital improvements, a number of things. And I was going to say I'm going to be very cautious what I say because of the fact that we're still in litigation. This is the settlement of a mediation procedure, and if we are to settle, then that would be the end of it. But if we don't, we go back to court.
Right. So I'd suggest that we've really done enough.
Well, that's what I asked you in the very beginning. I said, is it settled? Is everyone witness to that? I said, is this settled, and can I speak openly about this question?
Right.
And you said yes.
Yeah, and
it's settled. Now you're saying that it's not settled, and we have to be careful of what we say?
We have agreed with the other party to the terms, and I don't know if Glenn, if you wanted me to disclose any terms.
Let's not at this point, because
exactly.
I think, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
But, we have reached an agreement with the other party, but if for some reason, if the Civic Association doesn't want us to take over the system and totally improve it, replace all the pipelines, et cetera, that are in our settlement agreement, and you as a commission decide that we're not going to move forward with this, then obviously we're going to be back in litigation with the other party.
We already voted on this. We already
Yeah,
did.
I mean-
I'm confused, but I'm going to stop talking now because obviously we have
City
2
attorney
answers
he
to
has
the
to
same
address
question,
the due
so I'm going
process
to back
that's
off on that
required.
this time. Okay, thank you.
You've really completed this item. You've heard the public comments. That's all
Thank you
need to
very
say.
much. Appreciate it. Moving on, 10E, ordinance number 2017-22. This is the GASB rule. Ordinance needs to be read by the city attorney. Glenn?
This is the
10E.
Ordinance number 2017-22, the City of Lake Worth, Florida, establishing committed fund balances, designated the city manager assigned fund balance according to the City of Lake Worth Code, and providing for an effective date.
On
So
camera.
moved. Seconded.
Any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
This is a procedure where we take on every year, we have to adapt to the GASB rules and regulations for financial reporting and whatnot, so it's just more of a housekeeping issue. We've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. 12A, standard policies for the FY 2017-18 employee health and welfare benefits. Anyone have a presentation there?
Lauren, you want to?
Lauren,
You're up. She's on deck.
We move fast around here. Yeah.
Lauren Slade, our HR director.
Okay. Back in April 18th, 2017, we contracted with the Guerin Group as our new benefits broker of record. Guerin's are here if you have any questions. They immediately went out for RFP for our 2017-2018 employee health and welfare benefits.
Are you just talking in the microphone? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Just so people at home could hear.
Okay.
Motion
Hmm?
to discuss this?
All right.
There's no motion needed on this, is there?
What's that?
No.
It's-
No.
It
says-
No, it's not much.
Just an update.
Going? Okay. Okay. United Healthcare, Aetna, Humana, and Cigna all submitted responses. Cigna responded to a proposal which in exchange for bundling several of our
I'm sorry, there
benefits-
is. I'm sorry, you have to make a motion to approve the insurance policies, yes. So you
Okay.
have to make a motion to approve the
Then I
insurance
need a
policies.
motion on the floor, please. Thank you.
We're done?
No, hold on
No.
one moment, please.
So
I need to-
moved. Hang on.
Second.
Motion moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by Commissioner Amoroso. Come on, everyone. Get on the right page here. Thank you, Lauren. Please continue.
Okay. What am I doing?
Given the presentation.
Okay.
We don't usually do the presentation until we have a motion. Before you can speak, we have to make a motion.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. Okay. Cigna provided a proposal which, in exchange for bundling several of our benefits with their company, offers better coverage for employees and easier plan administration. The previous POS plans with the high deductibles were expensive and confusing to our employees. The Cigna proposals offers one PPO plan for all employees, which offers a much wider network, easy to understand copay program at no additional cost to our employees. The overall increase to all of our benefits for the year will be 2.9%.
Awesome.
So it's a great plan, great network. I think it's a great benefit for our employees. I'm excited.
It's good news from the last I thought the last policy was good. This is even better.
I think you'll be really happily surprised by the new network. All the complaint, when I first started, I heard a lot of complaints from the employees, and this addresses them.
Excellent. Any
We
questions?
worked hard, and the Guerins worked hard to get this for us.
Vice Mayor?
As a general rule, will folks have to, will they still be able to use their existing physicians?
No, well, actually.
In other words, have we cross-referenced the old United providers with the Cigna providers, and is there a discrepancy, and are folks going to be shopping for a new doctor or whatever provider?
Actually, I think they'll be happily surprised to find that the network is better, and some of the doctors that weren't covered in this last plan will be covered in this one. It's a much wider network.
Okay, we've got a motion on
There's
the...
always a chance. Did I cross-reference thousands of doctors? I did not, but this is the national network.
Got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, any updates anywhere else? Let's see, city attorney.
I think I've said enough tonight.
Thank you, city manager.
I just wanted to officially, at a commission meeting, introduce Ed Liberty, our new electric utility director. Yay! He has dived into the operations. We're meeting quite regularly. He's finding all kinds of good things. No, it's been shocking. Ed, if you just really briefly want to say hi so that people can see your face and hear your voice, and then
Hello, good evening. Glad
Set
to
the
be
timer.
Here.
There you go.
The clock is running. Yeah, 7 days into the job, and I heard my email was rebooted this afternoon, so some people called right away. So you're out of the system. Did you leave already? No, I'm still here and plan on staying for quite a while as I make the transition from the private sector to the public sector. Glad to be here. One of the first things I did and shared with Michael and the assistant manager was create a work list of things I wanted to get to right away. I broke it down into 3 areas. Strategic, which are things that are strategic to the city, to providing economic and reliable service. Probably more reliable and then economic. We need to work on reliability. But also the people issues, which is a very, very small, that's actually the smallest thing on the list. And then operations issues, day-to-day operations. Glad to report that on the people side, I find the staff in the first 7 days to be extremely committed. As committed, if not more committed, than I found in the private sector. So your staff here, the staff that I inherited, is extremely well prepared and committed to what they're doing. I'm working now to bring them to the next level, which is to raise the bar and help them move things quicker and be more educated about the decisions we make and the consequences, the pluses and the minuses, and the economic benefits of the things that we do. So we're going to be moving that along. So I have a penchant for, not a pension, but a penchant for wanting to do things quickly. I know that people want to do things quicker. And staff had shared with me that there's some things that they had gotten direction on. They said 3 to 5 years, and some direction they wanted 3 years. I said, how about 2? So not that we can actually do it in 2, but I want them thinking big and faster to bring these benefits to the city as quickly as possible. So that's what drives me. So glad to be here, glad to be of service, and looking forward to a long time together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Did you have anything?
That's it.
That's it. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Second, Commissioner Maximo, seconded by Commissioner Hardy. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone.